Welcome to my best bits of 2023, but quickly, first, I just gotta say thanks for watching my videos over the last year. And secondly, don't forget, I've still got a giveaway going for the set of max PD coilovers from my recent video review. So please consider getting on that giveaway. If you're in Australia, I'll send them to you for free. If you're overseas, we'll have to work out something with shipping. Next, of course, I've got the new join button on the website. So please check that out. Consider joining as a official member. And of course, there's more than one reason to get to that join button, because you can join the new Discord and join the personal private chat where you and me can talk about, well, anything, including MX-5's, but anything else as well. So yeah, as we come to the end of 2023, I wanted to recap and review the year. It was one of the most intense years for me. A lot went on with the car, a lot went wrong with the car. It traveled interstate, it set some amazing lap times, and it even got a couple of trophies at Oz Time Attack. So if you're wondering why there's a 3-hour MX-5 video in front of you, well, here is a roundup of all the highlights of the year. I've thrown it all together. You chuck it on in the background while you're working on the car in the garage, or grab some popcorn and your favorite beverage and relax, and of course, enjoy the show.
Today, I'm going to show you how to put this diamond stitched quilted roof lining in an MX-5 hardtop. So first things first, this is our quilted style leatheriness. It's sort of slightly padded, got a red stitched diamond shape. You know, it's cute. It's not everyone's taste, but I don't mind it. And this is my hardtop. Now, it's not a factory hardtop, but this process should work for any hardtop, including the factory ones. This is a fiberglass one. I'm just lying it down now. And the reason I think it's going to work really well is you can see there's this almost rectangular shape in the top of it here. Just has a few divots around the brackets for the hardtop, well, the permanent catches or latches. Yeah, almost a perfect rectangle. Seems like an easily achievable thing. Cut this out into that shape, somehow glue it on there, bam, quilted lining. Rightio, went to the shop, got some contact adhesive and laid the roof down here with the mat. Did end up putting this in the sun for a little bit. It didn't remove the creases, unfortunately, but it did make it sort of soft. So anyway, thrown down my cardboard template here as a bit of a glue protection for the bench top. I guess it's glue time. It's quite a big surface to paint in 3 to 5 minutes, so we'll see how we go. Yeah, let's just pour it on. Something like that. We can be pretty gloopy with our application, and we just need a nice clean edge. Oh, she's wafty. This stuff has got some stank to it. I'll do another one of these, like that. I don't know how well this is going to glue, so it's all a bit of a mystery, a bit of a experiment. The glue says it'll do something like 3 meters squared. This is maybe 1.5. Don't know. Maybe a meter square. So you think we'd get more out of the thing, but I've already used half the jug, so maybe it's a heavily absorbent kind of application. Depends on the type of products you're trying to glue together. And I'm applying it perhaps a bit too much, a bit too liberally. Okay, that's enough waiting, I think. Hopefully, we've got the quilted liner here. We'll just flip it over onto here. Of course, the tricky bit is getting it all sort of lined up, because as far as I'm aware, once this stuff sticks to itself, as in the other part, they're hard to separate. So we kind of got to get this pretty accurate first go. Now, if any of you are curious, this is the contact adhesive I used, Sika brand Contact Fix, Sika Bond 105 it says, and this is the vinyl dye I used around the edges of the roof lining. So now this stuff pretty much, it's kind of set. It doesn't really need a long time to cure. Once the two surfaces touch, that's kind of it. And this can's kind of done. Once you've used it, it's unlikely to last much longer in the can open, but anyway, there's a little bit in there. Maybe I'll keep it for one day, but there's a very good chance it'll kind of go gloopy and I'll just have to throw the rest of the tin. Probably used a little over maybe 2/3 of the tin of a 500ml can, so there you go. Here's our hardtop roof lining. One last shot before I stick it in. All in all, actually, the exposed edge isn't a problem around the kind of the 3 side and back edges, but the front edge, it is visible, but the other ones, it's actually not, so that's pretty good. It hasn't stuck down quite as well as I'd hoped in the middle there, so maybe I didn't get enough glue through that middle piece. Anyway, all another excuse to redo it with a piece of quilting that actually fits, but let's stick the thing on. I want to see how it looks. Overall, I'll be the first to say it ain't perfect, but I guess I'm pretty happy with the concept. Not the best result, but it's okay. The crease down the middle kind of disappoints me quite a bit, and that's the material I sourced. Maybe you can find something that's a bit better than this that doesn't come all folded up. That was the best I could find. The glue worked fine. I noticed online when you buy the kind of the kits that you can get for these, they tend to come with just like adhesive Velcro pads. I don't know how well that would stick to this roof. Maybe it would stick, but we shall see. In terms of the kind of edging and the cut, that worked out really well. The cardboard template was kind of spot on, but hey, that's because I made it. No. And the way it lines up with the back edge is really nice. The crease down the middle kind of kills it the most. But it gives it a nice feel, kind of a coziness to it. Removes some of the drum out of the roof, so maybe you'll have a little bit less road noise in here. But overall, yeah, it's cool. It gives a bit more character and flavour in the car, and it removes the ugly kind of chop matte hardtop the fiberglass, because this is not a factory roof. It removes that chop matte fiberglass look that was there, gives it something a bit nicer. Brendan from the future, and we're about to go out for a drive in the car, and I thought I'd let you know that it's holding up really well. The roof looks great. The creases have reduced actually with time. You can still see this horizontal one still there, but it's not as bad as it was. It's just sort of a little bit kind of bubbly, and then otherwise the roof is looking really good. It's holding up well, it's stuck up okay. So back to me in the past. Now, as I say, about 50 bucks for this. I think online, if you're gonna go and buy one of these, the Nakame ones or whatever that brand is from Japan, I don't know if they make them anymore, many hundreds of dollars. And I think, you know, the people who ripped those guys off, what are they called? Carbon Miata or something. They started making something similar, and it's maybe 150 US dollars. This was maybe 50 bucks. So, you know, give or take, I suppose. Depends how much you want to invest in doing it yourself versus just paying a company kind of to buy the product off them. I like the challenge of doing these things. Get to make a video for it. Gives you ideas. Yeah. Let me know if you enjoyed. Let me know what you think I could do better or what I should have done. And obviously leave that down below in the comments so other people can see it. Maybe they can learn from my mistakes as well as you can teach them how to do it better than I did. Thanks for watching.
What do you do when you want to go faster? You add more downforce.
Today's video is about adding a gurney flap to the wing of my MX-5 track car here. What is a gurney flap, you ask? Well, why are you asking me? I'm not a smart person. Just pause this video and go and Google Dan Gurney. I'll wait.
Okay, if you say so. Now I know everything.
Hi, welcome back. All right, so adding a gurney flap is pretty straightforward. As you've just learned, it's effectively, in general, a piece of 90-degree angle attached to the trailing edge of the wing on a car, usually a car. I'm sure it's applicable to other things that use wing type stuff, but yeah, we're doing it on a car. Initially, when I was looking at doing this, it was like, okay, let's just go to the aluminium metal supply place and buy some smallish sized aluminium angle, but I ended up finding some carbon fiber. Ooh. This was a little bit tricky to source, however, and originally I couldn't get carbon fiber angle, at least not for a reasonable price. So I ended up buying box tube, carbon fiber box tube, and cutting it to make it angles. Let me show you how I did that. Now maybe I'm getting rusty at Googling, but I struggled to find carbon fiber in a sort of an angled shape, so I bought this 15mm carbon fiber box tube, and then I cut it into 2 pieces. Now, obviously at first that might sound a bit hard or fiddly, but I ended up coming up with a reasonably okay solution on how to cut these into 2 pieces. Effectively, you take your box or your square, and I'll try and give you a close-up of what that kind of looks like. It's not going to focus because it's a little bit tricky, but you get the gist, right? And then I cut down one corner and down one corner, and that turns into 2 right-angled pieces. I used a small router, mounted it upside down, secured to my vise, ran a vacuum into the thing so that I wasn't making too much carbon dust everywhere, and then added a fence to the router. So that way, effectively, I could just trim an exact amount off this at a fairly consistent and straight angle on a straight line on both sides and end up with 2 pieces. Worked great. The other thing was to buy a full length, so the wing is, I don't know, 1.8 meters, maybe not quite that long. And you don't want to say buy a full 2 meter length of tube or even a 1 meter length of tube. Well, you would. I would if I could, but I couldn't. So these are, I think, 500, perhaps 500 mil long. So cutting it into 2 gives me a 1 length piece. So I bought 2 boxes, carbon boxes, cut them all. Now I've got 4 500 mil lengths. Perfect. Now, I guess not perfect. The perfect solution would be to have a single long solid piece. Anyway, we're going to make do. We're just going to have small joins, but they'll be insignificant once hopefully this is all glued down. And that's the next part, I suppose. I've got the carbon, I've got to glue it down. Now, in terms of how you work with carbon, you got to be careful. I used a vacuum to try and capture as much of the dust as I could. When I was cutting it, I wore a mask, I wore earmuffs because the router is noisy. And then I finished these with a file, just a hand file, nothing special, just to bring down any burrs and smooth out any uneven cut lines and things. But while I was doing that, I wore gloves because you don't want carbon dust everywhere. I'll bring you over here and I'll show you. So this is the router setup. So you can see just a small bit in there and effectively a square, straight edge for it to cut, and it's just cutting a small notch out of the corner of the box to get 2 angled pieces. So that worked well, and then just some dodgy masking tape to attach the end of the vacuum to that to suck up the dust. And then this is all my filing dust. Pretty grotty stuff. You would not want this on your hands, in your eyes, down your lungs. Hence why I was wearing the gloves. I was actually using the towel just now to wipe these down of any remaining dust because I do not want carbon dust on me. It just sticks to your skin and gets itchy and it's really unpleasant. So that's sort of how I got to this point. I've got now 4 sections of 500 mil long carbon angle. They now need to go onto the car. Now I've laid out my first 3 sections of carbon and they stretch almost the full length of the wing. I'm going to need this 4th piece and cut about, I don't know, 150 mil off the end. It's only going to need about that much to fill the last piece. So again, not ideal to have it in multiple pieces, but you work with what you got. And I'm cheap. Now, to be fair, I'll put how much this carbon cost me somewhere up here. It wasn't that expensive delivered to my door. Definitely not as cheap as buying aluminium, but not that bad and a lot cheaper than anything else I could find online. So the little bit of extra effort in terms of using shorter pieces and stuff I had to cut was worth the cost saving. If you want to buy the stuff, links in the description somewhere, and yeah, the price is there. It wasn't that bad. So we're going to glue this stuff on now. I'm going to use Sikaflex. I'll find the high strength Sikaflex stuff out of my drawer over there, and we'll just get gluing. All right, so I've got my glue, got my carbon ready to go, got some acetone on the floor just in case things get messy, gloves on because this stuff is messy, and some paper towel over there in case I need it. I've given this edge a wipe down with some of that acetone, and I'm going to apply the glue as fairly thinly as I can along the carbon. I think that'll be easier to get a cleaner result. I'm kind of being not generous. What's the opposite of generous? Stingy with my glue application because I don't want too much. I really just want a thin smear. We're not trying to seal our gap here, we're trying to glue the things together. I should use the Sikaflex 252, which is like the real hardcore automotive grade stuff. This is more like a sealant adhesive because it's the Sikaflex, whatever it is, 11 or something. But anyway, I didn't want to open a brand new jar of or tube of 252 just for this job. So we'll just line it up with the back of the wing, and I'm going to have to press down as kind of hard as I can. And you can see why I got to wear gloves, because immediately I'm getting squeeze out on my fingers. So this is going to make a mess. Grab my rag. Bit of acetone on said rag, and I'm just going to wipe this back edge. It wasn't too much squeeze out actually. There's probably a little bit tight on the glue. I don't know, hopefully that was enough. There isn't a whole lot of squeeze out along here, just a few spots here and there. I'm not going to touch it. It's going to be too hard to wipe, I think. Maybe I'll scrape it up later with a blade. Let's move on to the next piece of angle. Kind of want to do this fairly quickly. I don't want to take forever. Line it up again with the back edge of the wing. When you're doing this sort of stuff, it's handy to kind of push down, but also kind of jiggle back and forth. It's probably like laying tiles, not that I'm a bathroom tiler, but you kind of get the glue in and get them kind of, I don't know, the glue gets in there, you know what I'm saying? Okay. Again with the acetone, need a bit more this time, made more of a mess. This time I'm probably going to need a new rag. Oh no, here's a clean spot. And we do need to wipe this side because I've made a mess with my fingers. It's one of the challenges of using this stuff is you touch things and it gets everywhere. Well, that glue up all went pretty good. Overall, not too messy. I probably got just about the right amount of glue on there. Thankfully, as I mentioned, this stuff is black, so it kind of blends in. If that was like a white wing, you'd see big black streaky messes all over the wing, but it all blends in, so it's kind of hidden. You can see I had to clamp down one section. It was a little bit wavery. The wing must have been cut not 100% perfect or something, or it's perhaps warped with weather and time. So a couple of bits of timber for some spaces and those springy clamps, and yeah, that's sorted. I'd like to have more clamps along there, like 10, and then everything's really squished down, but I've only got the 2 clamps, so work with what you got. Other than that, it all looks pretty good. It's all lined up okay. I need to give it some time now to glue, and then we can wrap it up. Is this going to work out on track? Is my wing going to make more downforces? in theory, yes, you watched the Dan Gurney Googles, so it's told you that this is supposed to make your wing gooder. Will it be for me? Look, I'm not a good enough driver to be able to measure such an insignificant thing. I'm so stressed about trying to drive the car as it is. This one small insignificant change isn't going to be obviously perceptible to me. I'm not that attuned to driving, unless of course it somehow like drops my lap times by 3 seconds. Even if it does that, I probably won't realize. I'll just be going around the track driving as fast as I can and then look down and go, oh, where'd that 3 seconds come from? Small changes like this are kind of iterative. You do 100 small changes and eventually you find time gained. Doing one little small thing like this isn't going to make, well, for a pleb like it is not going to make a significant enough change that I'll be able to, I guess, obviously detect the difference. But we do these things as well as many other things so that hopefully as a whole we get a benefit of a faster car. Sorry for the spiel. All right, I'll catch you in a minute once this is glued. Rightio, glue's all set now. Gurney flap done. Took the wing end plate off just for dramatic effect so we can kind of have a better look at the profile, and honestly I'm quite happy with how this one's turned out. The carbon fiber strips have gone on really quite nice. The effort it took to cut them wasn't that big of a drama once I worked out that I could use the router to trim them down nice and straight. Having multiple segments really didn't cause any issue here other than just, it was actually probably better. It was easier to work with. You can kind of glue small bits at once rather than one big long strip. And now that they're glued down, they all sit flush to one another. You'd never know really unless someone told you. And it's not going to affect the way it performs. It's going to perform a gurney flap as a gurney flap perfectly fine, although there are multiple pieces to it. Glue's set up nice and hard. I can't see that coming away unless someone pulls it off. It's definitely not going to come away even at speed. So overall, seems like a good result. I'm no aerodynamicist, I'm no engineer. I can't guarantee this is going to make the car faster or better or anything, but you know, I'm giving things a go here. And hopefully this is proof that if this is something you're considering for your car, I can do it, so can you, and at a fairly low cost. If you want to do this super cheap, go and find your sort of aluminium wholesaler, get like a 6 meter length of aluminium angle, trim it to the width of your wing, and it would honestly cost you maybe 10 bucks in parts. This carbon was closer to about $50 or so, which is still pretty low. Now, of course, proof in the pudding in actually driving the thing and seeing there's a difference. I'm no expert driver here, so I can't guarantee I'm actually going to notice a real difference to the car. It's such a minuscule change. I don't think I'm going to be like, oh my God, the car's so dramatically different. But nonetheless, we'll see what happens out on track. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. Go and stick a gurney flap on your car.
Let's go. Turn one, down to fourth gear, turn the car in, ride the inside curb, right out to the little bumps on the exit. We just give them a little kiss. Brake at about the 75 meter board, down to third, turn in. Long corner, short shift to fourth, ride this curb like the bee's knees. We're going all over that. Hold it into fourth. Slight brake as we come into the long sweeper. We're chasing down this little Hyundai XL. There, uh-oh, I've got no brakes. Something's not going right there. Why have I got no brakes? Got no brakes. It's funny, I turned into, was it the sweeper? Put my foot on the brakes and it didn't feel right. It still doesn't, it feels spongy all of a sudden. Far too early in the session for that.
we're gonna have to come in. Not happy with that one. Feels too soft. Oh, okay, something's very wrong. Okay, something is very wrong. Broken, boys. Not good. Power off. Locked up a brake? A bolt come loose on the rotor or something? Not sure. Off. Off. Whoop.
Well, that session ended a bit abruptly. There was a mechanical failure, which meant that this wheel no longer rotates. I had to get towed back into the pits, which is the first time in my 15-something years driving on track that I've had to have a car get towed in, so not such a bad record. There's some damage, I've got some things to fix, it does suck. I'm trying to not let it get me down too much. It does hurt, and yeah, so look, fundamentally I kind of feel like if you take into account 15 years of driving on track, having one mechanical failure like this doesn't seem so bad. It wasn't my driving, I didn't crash it, it just something broke. What broke exactly? Let me show you. So front passenger side wheel, front left wheel is the one that suffered. You can see tyre is flat, and that's not because of the tyre, that is because the rim has been punctured. For those of you that know MX-5's, you'll know that's not the position that the brake caliper should be, and it's not at the right angle. Fundamentally, I haven't been able to get in behind there to exactly see what's happened, but this caliper has moved, it's come loose, or the bracket's failed. I'm assuming it's bolts that have come loose, and it's effectively grabbed onto the rotor, shifted with the rotor, and then jammed itself up at a wrong angle in the wheel. So it's jammed between the rotor and the wheel. Could not get the wheel off, even pulling all the lug nuts off the wheel, and the caliper are all wedged and mechanically squeezed together so tightly that I can't get the thing off. And it also means the wheel does not rotate. The fact that the tyre has gone flat tells me that there's, although there's a very bad scoring in the inside of the barrel of the rim, it's punctured up here somewhere and put a hole in the rim itself. So the rim is completely done. Hopefully, if I'm lucky, the caliper's salvageable, it's safe, it's just maybe scuffed up a bit. So obviously something had happened earlier on in the lap. I noticed the brake pedal didn't feel right, the brakes didn't feel right, and I think I mentioned while I was driving out there, I don't know if you'll hear it in the footage, but I noticed something was wrong, and my intention was to come into the pits. So I wasn't going fast when the full failure happened, but clearly something had already gone wrong beforehand, a few corners earlier. Prior to that, the car had been holding up fine, running great throughout the day. It was only that final failure that put an end to my laps. Now, because of the way it all went down, the wheel locked up, I could not rotate the wheel, I couldn't run the car for the rest of the day, but it also meant it was really hard to get it off track because it didn't roll, and also onto the trailer because it couldn't roll up on this trailer. The trailer's not really great for cars that don't rotate under their own wheels. So I had to pull it on backwards, and then this wheel has sort of skid itself on. Even that was a bit of a drama. Now my next drama is trying to get this damaged wheel off. Suffice to say the wheel is done, and when I think about it, it's all kind of jammed on there, and I've tried to lever or shove this caliper back to its kind of sort of normal position so that I can get the wheel off. But because the caliper's wedged against the rim, none of them want to move, none of them want to come off the hub. I'm thinking, given the wheel's done, I might as well sacrifice it and cut all the spokes with the grinder. That way it's free from the center hub piece, and it should be able to rotate around the caliper. And once the wheel comes off and is no longer wedged against the caliper or the outside barrel of the rim, then the rest will just come away. The wheel's done. There's no reason I can't just cut the shit out of the spokes to get it free. Now that's what, a 10 spoke or something rim, so you're going to have to cut each of these spokes, but I really don't care. Like, the wheel's done, so that's probably going to be the easiest way. You could fluff around in the back trying to get parts of the suspension undone, but then you're still going to have a whole hub assembly come off all in one piece, and then kind of knock or hammer or lever things apart. I've already tried to do that with the wheel in place, and nothing's really budging. Because this caliper is all wedged up against between the brake rotor and the wheel, none of them want to move, and they're all kind of in a squishy position, and the caliper's been mechanically jammed in there by the weight of the car as it slowed through pit entry. Hopefully the tyre is salvageable. I don't know. Given it had to skid a short distance, I wasn't going that fast. Thankfully I was coming into the pits anyway. So there's probably a 5-10 metre skid mark on the track, but it was at a fairly low speed, not like a massive lock up at 150 k's an hour or something. So hopefully the tyre is salvageable. Just need a new rim. Maybe the caliper's okay, so maybe the total cost of this is a new wheel if I'm lucky. We'll see. Given the car's kind of stuck and not rotating, I'm going to make it a little bit hard to get it off the trailer, so I'm probably going to try and fix it on the trailer. Maybe I'll lower it down. I have got obviously the ability to lower this trailer, try and get a jack under that front wheel somewhere, just enough that I can grind off the rim, which sounds crazy, but I think that's what I'm going to do. And then just get whatever other wheel on there so that the car's rolling, I can roll it back into the shed and hopefully fix it from there. Sneak peek of the new car here. Tell me if you can work out what it is. Coming soon to a video near you. Anyway, that's what happened with this thing. It's a bummer, feel a bit shit about it, but I try to look on the bright side. It wasn't that bad. I'm hoping it's not too hard to fix. And I've come home safe. It kind of wasn't my fault insofar as I didn't crash the thing. It was a mechanical failure. Suffice to say, probably still somehow I am to blame because I am the mechanic, I guess. So we'll see what we can do to make sure this doesn't happen again.
Welcome to a video of opinions where I tell you what I think about things that you asked me to tell you about. Let's go. Where are we going? We're going for a drive. Yeah, we're going to talk to the people. So yes, I reached out to the kind of general community and I got about 25 questions that I think are pretty interesting. Mostly stuff about MX-5's, as you'd expect. Let's get straight to it. Oh, by the way, yes, we're going to go for a bit of a cruise while we talk, so it's a little bit more exciting. And I've got a on-site mechanic with me in case we have any issues along the way. Question the first, in no specific order, Andrew T asked, what experience do you have with or thoughts on the NC generation of MX-5's? My experience is I've driven them maybe once or twice, so not that much. Have not owned one. I think they're a little bit, perhaps a little bit bigger or heavier than I'd like for an MX-5. I like the very shrunkenness down that the NA and NB in particular have, and I think the ND is kind of a bit more going that way. But nonetheless, the NC is a very strong platform, a little bit more robust, a little bit, probably a bit more logical for a track car. Although it is heavier and therefore, you know, you're going to burn through brakes and things a bit more. There's the crossover with the RX-8 means you've got some parts and things and upgrade options there that wouldn't necessarily exist otherwise. Also, you've got perhaps some more wheel, brakes, tyre options that don't exist on the NA, NB, where we're kind of,
I mean, there are bigger wheel options for these cars, but you're kind of normally restricted to a 15x9 inch rim. You're hard to get much bigger. There are bigger wheels, but nonetheless, there are some pros to the NC. Probably a slightly better general everyday road car. A little bit bigger and heavier means a little bit more comfort on the road, a little bit better road handling in terms of bumps and things. If you're, you know, in these sorts of roads that I'm in today, this car's a little bit rickety. So yeah, there are lots of pros to the NC. Number 2, E&G asks, what engine swaps have you considered previously? And he says he's planning to put a K24 NA engine with an MX-5 6-speed into his car over the next few years. And do I know anyone here in Australia who has experience with doing that sort of thing? In terms of engine swaps, the only ones that have crossed my mind is something similar, a Honda swap, where you've got that sort of higher revving, fairly powerful for a naturally aspirated engine Honda motor in an MX-5. So you sort of keep a lot of the characteristics of the MX-5 without drastically changing it. A lot of still a lot of reliability is there. And you're not going to blow away anything in the drivetrain. Most of the rest of the car will hold itself together quite happily. For me, that makes a lot of sense, but it's just the cost is quite high to source the engine and then all the bits to make it fit, custom subframes, the exhaust, making it fit with the gearbox. There's a lot of custom parts there that aren't really high volume, and so therefore the cost is quite high. So it's just not something I've ever gone down the route of. There are obviously umpteen other options. I've just never really considered them. LS, V6 options, none of them really appeal to me, or I just don't have the money and the time to consider them. So yeah, in terms of who or what I know in Australia that's done it, honestly, I know one bloke here in Melbourne that's considering doing something similar, but he's just one guy doing it at home in his garage. Other than that, I really don't have any special advice for you. I got no one that can do it for you. You'd have to reach out to some, I guess, race engineering shops and see if someone is available who can do that sort of thing for you. Tilla asks, if you couldn't choose an MX-5 platform to build off, what alternatives would I consider? It's hard to say, honestly. The MX-5, it's small, it's lightweight, it's quite compelling for a track car. I think the GT86, the Toyota 86, the current generation, or the newer one, not the old one, they're a bit bigger, but they have similar characteristics. Still fairly small and lightweight, but not as small and lightweight. You've got quite a nice aftermarket parts availability, which is good. They're quite a capable, nice to drive kind of car. Maybe not as raw as the MX-5, but I can't think of anything else that would match that kind of fits the bill. There are other cars out there, maybe some Hondas, S2000, that sort of thing, but maybe they've had their time, or perhaps not quite the style of driving that I'd be looking for. So I think if I didn't have this car, if I didn't have the MX-5's, probably a Toyota 86. Next up from Epitome, he says, engine rewiring. The only thing left in my way, it's knocked my confidence and my ability isn't there. I couldn't say I would do it properly, but a video is a good place to start. I understand what you're saying, Epitome. Engine rewiring is a little bit of a daunting task. I've never done kind of a full harness build or anything like that. If you've watched channels like, I know locally here, the Skid Factory, the bloke on there, Al, I think his name is, he'll build a custom loom, or he'll pull apart an existing engine loom and then rebuild it quite a few times. And it's impressive to see it done. Certainly, I agree. If it was me personally, I'm a little bit, a little bit concerned about doing it myself. I'm not an expert. I've pulled apart bits of the harness and restuck them back together, and I'm very concerned or considerate of the fact that if you got it wrong, it would be a bad situation. You could potentially have a non-running car and have no idea why, because you've pulled apart wires and not put them back together.
When I have pulled apart the harness in my car, I've pulled it apart while it's still in the car and attached. I've not pulled the whole harness out, pulled it apart, and then put it back in. So I had it sort of all attached to the car, and I was doing it wire by wire, connector by connector, while everything was still attached. So I knew I was only unplugging things that didn't matter or weren't specific to the engine. You know, power window wiring or something. So I can trace the plug from the power window motor and the wires that come out of that, trace them back to where they terminate and cut them out from there. So I'm doing it in a safe manner. I haven't got to the point of building a full custom harness. There are better experts out there. HP Academy, I know they offer a sort of courses on this sort of thing. That might be something you'd want to consider. P Rover asks, a walkthrough or shopping list of engine management monitoring, what temp sensors I'd use, and where I install them, and why that's my preference, etc., etc., yada yada yada. None of the sensors I use are glamorous or fancy. Most of the temp sensors are GM temp sensors because the Mega Squirt ECU I run in my track MX-5 just kind of knows how to talk to those. So the engine coolant temp sensor is in the OEM location, uses the factory Mazda sensor. Oil temp is just in a block, a distribution block thing next to the oil filter. And air temp is a fairly straightforward. The air temp sensor is in the side of the intake of the exit port of the intercooler. It's an open cell GM temp sensor. I've also got two GM temp sensors in the transmission and the diff. They're new additions. They're just plugged straight into the drain ports of the trans and the diff. I've also got pressure sensors for fuel and oil. Those are generic eBay ones. I'll put a link or an image or something up on the video now so you can kind of see what they look like. They're nothing glamorous, but they do work. So in terms of those ones, plumbed into, again, the distribution block for the oil and into a port in the fuel pressure regulator. So I run an aftermarket Raceworks fuel pressure reg, and it has a port for a sensor. Hope that helps. Dominic asks, love to see the whole car's wiring harness and how you've routed it. I'm planning on routing my rear harness, rear lights and things through the trans tunnel. So I guess I kind of covered on that earlier in terms of how I've routed it, mostly using the OEM location. So things like the fuel pump runs along the driver's side leg in the right-hand drive car, up the back and then straight to the fuel tank. So there's not really much wiring running through the trans tunnel. Even the battery, which I've moved from the boot in under the dashboard, the wiring for that, there's no wiring like a main power harness through the trans tunnel or anything anymore. Like the factory battery wiring hooks up to the power plant frame and things. So I've deleted that on my track car. Otherwise, the harness is more or less OEM, and where it's located is kind of OEM. A lot of wiring under the dash is a little bit customized. I've wrapped it with Velcro cable ties and stuff to kind of keep it tidy, but also modular if I got to pull anything out. But yeah, I hope that helps. Rob G says, more VVT supercharged goodness. Well, I have some good news and some bad news. The good news is we're in the car right now. It's got VVT. The bad news is it's got no supercharger anymore. I'll be honest with you. The local authorities reached out to my car club and they said, why have you got a supercharger on it? That doesn't seem legal. Where? Your headlights are dodgy. Everything about your car is illegal. We're taking away your registration for your vehicle. So I said, you authorities, my car is not supercharged. It's perfectly legal. It is as per the legal registration requirements and things. If you'd like to know more about that, reach out to me privately. But we're in the car, unfortunately. It's more or less standard. Jack says, I'm loving the recent explosion in regular uploads. Thank you, Jack. I upload when I can, and when I can't, I don't, if that makes sense.
It's just a hobby. I do it when I can. What's that? That's a goat. Yeah, a big goat. Yeah. Can you see him? Yeah, he's through the bushes there. We've stopped again because this one's a big one. So Bjorn asks, or says, let's be honest, he's written us a little letter. Hi, my name is Bjorn. I'm from Sweden. I recently bought an NA MX-5, a 97 1.8, totally original. Had a Triumph GT6 Mark I for 34 years and sold it to buy this one owner MX-5. I would love to try and do some small mods, though I've only driven it 4,800 Swedish miles. I assume Swedish miles are the same as most other miles. Very solid car. About to change to a Nardi steering wheel. I think that's a good idea. And I've got the program that you produced on YouTube about interchangeable between NA and NB. Yes, thank you. In my car there is a Momo wheel, ugly one, but it is a late car. Fair enough. The question, of course, he asks is if you think or know that a 3-spoked Nardi airbag wheel will fit. So Bjorn, the answer to your question is almost undoubtedly yes, it'll work. There is always a way to change the steering wheel. If your steering wheel is kind of built in with the hub attached, you may need to buy what's usually called a Boss kit, and then you'll be able to fit any aftermarket wheel. I hope that's fairly clear. We're going for a cruise, mate. Is that cool? Let's keep going. Thanks, Bjorn. I liked your story, and I liked your question. Next up from some dork, he says, what's your favourite faction in Supreme Commander, and how many Pepsi Maxes do you consume per day on average? Very good question. The answers are UEF and no more than one. Matt K says, an update on all your cars, plus the LiPo batteries in the race car, and the coolant reboot, and how the Kraken is going. Well, that's a lot of questions in one. So the update is the red MX-5 has sold, so I'm now down to this NA MX-5 and my NB track car. My ND has also been sold, so just 2 MX-5s at the moment. It's the lowest number it's ever been in a very long time. I sold the red MX-5 for an upcoming project that you'll see very soon. I sold the ND because we need a bit more space. It's only a 2-seater car and the family's a bit big for that. LiPo batteries are going well. I also had a set, well, they're actually LiFePO, or lithium iron phosphate, not lithium iron polymer. So the LiFePO batteries were great. This car had a set, the track car still has a set. Unfortunately, I popped the set that were in this car, so this car is now running a new set of traditional LiPos. Yes, they popped, mate. The batteries popped. They popped because I left the bloody lights on. And doing so basically kills the battery. And how's the Kraken going? So far, so good. I did blow an exhaust gasket on it. I replaced that. That probably lasted a couple of years. Other than that, it seems to be going great. Alex G says, what's the best track-oriented mod that you've done that someone wouldn't guess immediately? Not obvious stuff like tyres, suspension. Because obviously the first thing you'd say is, well, tyres or suspension. What's a not obvious but very good mod? Difficult question. I don't know what becomes not obvious. I guess the obvious things are tyres, brakes, coilovers. They're kind of the first 3 you might want to go with. Maybe you could say a good seat. Having a good seat is really important for having good road handling. And I guess what goes with that is, of course, the harness. Other things you might say is a good steering wheel. For me, the factory steering wheels just don't work. They're not in the right position. And most critically, having the steering wheel further towards me, I hate most of the factory steering wheel positions in the MX-5s are too far away. And I guess that's because I'm a bit taller. So if you're a shorter person, your legs are usually shorter, your seat is closer to the wheel, and it all makes sense. For me, I like the steering wheel quite close. So almost all my cars have like an extension or a boss to bring them out. Or in my other track car,
the steering wheel has quite a bit of dish. So for me, that's an important one. Other than that, I don't know. I think we'll go with that. Seating position and steering wheel are really critical for me. I like to be comfortable in the car. Johan P says, your 3 tips for every Miata driver that wants to hit the track with their car. Number 1, check all the basics, your maintenance, coolant level, oil levels, all of that stuff. Don't stuff that stuff up because it's so obvious and important, but critical as well. Number 2, tires are important. Tire pressures are important, but mostly the quality of your tires, right? If you've got a OEM basic, boring, plastic, cheap tire, you need to drive to those conditions. If you've got a nice sticky tire, you'll know you can push it a bit more. But a rough, cheapy tire, you've got to be careful with it. And number 3, undoubtedly, yeah, crappy tires mean you crash. I've done it myself. So you got to be careful. Number 3, the number 3 tip above all else is getting practice in. And that means putting time in at the track, but also you can put time in other ways. Sim racing, driving Gran Turismo, it teaches you about how to drive a car well, where the limits are, and how to handle those limits. So it's very, very important to just put the time in to learn how to drive. Don't spend money on your car if you don't know how to do kind of even just the basics. Thanks, Johan. Jamie T says, what control arms are you using all round on the Time Attack car? Completely factory. I don't know what else to say to that question. They're all OEM. I haven't touched them in any way. I don't really see any value in using aftermarket ones. Maybe they'd be a bit lighter, but the cost is not really worth the benefit. I guess the only thing to add there is I do use Delrin bushings or bushes, the SAD Fab kit, and that's a really nice kit. So I do use that. Next one is from James. He says, how are you doing? Channel went quiet for a bit. Hopefully you've had a well-deserved break. I don't know if I've deserved the break, but anyway, thanks for all the stuff you put out though. It's great. A great resource for MX-5 owners around the world, not just us Aussies. Thank you, James. Yes, had to be quiet for a little while. I was busy doing things, just life in general. But I'm trying to, I try to make videos when I can and when I want to. If I don't want to do them, I'm not going to. It's just a hobby for me. I don't make a lot of money out of these videos, so if I'm doing them, I need to do it because I want to, and I'm glad to help others. Not everything I do is correct or a fact. Sometimes my videos are just my opinion. So, you know, if you're interested in doing anything MX-5, do your homework and don't just look at my videos because they're not going to be the only option. Sam P, hello Sam, hope you're doing well. He has questions around strategies, driving style and tuning on how to keep an NB 6-speed gearbox alive with a turbo-built engine, torque limitation, tuning suggestions, lots of mixed info online. And look, I'm just going to add to that mixed info because what I'm going to tell you is purely my experience. I don't have all the answers. I know Sam is building or has built recently a fairly powerful MX-5 engine, so he's certainly a good candidate for this. My car it's fairly straightforward. I drive it at the track, and when I say at the track, I'm not talking a drag race, I'm talking Time Attack style. That means I'm not really dumping clutches or putting sudden shock to the driveline, and I don't do that a lot. Don't do that ever. I don't do things like burnouts, and I run fairly sticky tires. So yeah, for me, certainly mechanical sympathy is the first one. I feel like I'm a fairly mechanically sympathetic person. I try to not rag on the car too much, but look, sometimes when the red mist hits, you do kind of push the car pretty hard. But that said, thrashing the shit out of the car, smashing gears, putting shock through the driveline isn't going to be a good thing. The second and the most important thing for me is I've limited my torque, and I think Sam's kind of touched on that. When the car was on the dyno, I said to the dyno tuner, peak torque 350 Newton meters, which is, I can't remember exactly how many foot-pounds. I'll put it on the screen here for you.
but fundamentally, that's the main way that I, as far as I'm aware, to keep the gearbox together, is to just not put too much power through it. What that means is the power figure, or the curve for power, is very linear and kind of an upward curve, whereas torque will come up and then it's a very horizontal line. And so as your RPMs build, your power builds, because power is kind of a multiple of RPMs by torque, but the torque is very flat. It's just 350 Newton meters all the time, everywhere. That's how I've done it. That's what's working for me. The gearbox is holding itself together. Synchros are a little rough, but that perhaps is just age and wear more than power. Hope that helps, Sam. Thanks for your very thoughtful question. We actually got another question from Paul B, and he asks something of a similar query, although a little bit different. His query is, well, I second the transmission question. How many transmissions have you gone through, and what have you learned to keep them alive the longest? Have you had any throttle body failures? What throttle body setup do you works best, and what's the most reliable for my application? Thank you for the awesome turbo content. So Paul, the answer is I've only had one gearbox, and it's still in the car. It's the same one I've always used. I have not blown one yet. I do have a spare in the shed in case I kind of need to swap it out if and when that does happen. And I guess I've touched on the strategies on how I've kept the thing alive. It's, you know, the days are numbered, undoubtedly. We'll see how long it lasts. In terms of throttle body, when I built this engine with the turbo stuff, I added a Skunk 2 throttle body. I did the spring mod, I think that's what it's called. So Paul, I hope that kind of clarifies things. I don't know, I have heard bad stories about the Skunk. I've heard bad stories about the kind of copy, the Chinese copies of the Skunk. But for me, I've done everything I think I can to keep that thing alive and working and not falling apart. So Yee Mate says, hey mate, hope I'm not too late to ask a question. No, you're not too late, because it took me forever to get around to making this video. But it would be awesome to know some more information on your track car. What headlight blanks am I using? What sway bar setup am I using? And did I notice better cooling when I had the ducting behind the radiator out of the hood? Thanks, your channel is awesome. I appreciate the kind words. So headlight blanks I made myself. They are just fiberglass and carbon fiber. I took OEM NB2 headlights, put some cling film, glad wrap over them so that they were kind of protected, slathered on some fiberglass and some resin, and out came some very rudimentary headlight blanks. That's as simple as it was. I didn't make a mold or anything, I just slapped some carbon over the top of them. In terms of sway bar setups, the rear is completely factory, and of course I'm assuming we're talking about my NB track car. Yeah, the rear is completely factory. The front I have a full video on. I'll try and remember to post the link in the description for you, but you can find it on my channel. It is a very impressive and custom setup by HM Speed Shop. Really nice guy. He sent me a bunch of gear on that kit for free. Very kind of him. So I have to say that. But the kit, the gear is impressive. So billet, aluminium parts, fully custom, really nice, and it works exceptional for me. You can kind of custom spec the torque, the tube that powers that sway bar. So, or is the sway bar, I suppose you'd say. Very NASCAR style. So yeah, really nice. And in terms of cooling, look, I don't know. I never measured really logically before and after, and the car changed so much between having the extra ducting out the hood and not having it. I still have ducting between the bumper and the rad, and I still have the duct holes in the hood. So hopefully it's all doing its job. But yeah, I never did measurements of before and after without any other changes. Isaac G says, I found an NA MX-5 for sale near me. It makes 300 horsepower and interested in buying. The seller claims it's reliable and it looks to have a lot of money spent on it, which a lot of MX-5s do. Concerned about reliability of the gearbox since it's a 5-speed. Do you have a lot of experience with the 5 speeds and making high horsepower? Are there any big things to look out for? Look, I don't.
of all my 5-speeds, they've all been factory power. I've only ever had the high power car with the 6-speed. The general consensus is the 5-speed is not as strong as the 6, and you need to be careful. As long as everything else is mechanically sound, 300 horsepower is a lot. And if the car is able to handle that, your weakest link is almost likely to be the gearbox. It's probably a factor of how long, right? How long before it no longer lasts. Motorbike. I don't have any tricks or tips on how to make it last. I guess, as I mentioned earlier, limiting torque is probably the right answer, but the limit of torque for the 5-speed is lower than the 6-speed. So it's a risk. You'll have to take that guess, or you blow the 5-speed and you replace it. They're not that expensive to source, so you can buy a second-hand one for not that much money. Good luck. Aiden asks, you've probably covered this in your videos, but what got you into Mazdas or MX-5s? Perhaps something I haven't covered is quite possible. So the answer is straightforward. I was in my early 20s and a friend invited me to an MX-5 training day at Winton Raceway. I didn't have an MX-5 at the time, so I came in my 1985 Ford Telstar. That was what I was driving, that was my car. And it was a kind of a training day where you drive your own car at the track and you kind of learn how to drive fast. And you know, I had no experience with real on-track driving. My experience extended to Gran Turismo. So this was exciting and fun for me. The feedback I got from the people running the event was that I had, you know, good basic skills and I sort of knew what to do, but obviously I was an amateur and you know, needed some work. But the thing that kind of bit the bug was during that event, one of the owners there in an MX-5 said, "Hey, anyone want to come out for driving my car as a passenger?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, that sounds great." This guy was considered as part of the MX-5 club, one of the kind of faster drivers out there. And I get in this car and he thrashes it around the track and I'm like, whoa, this is crazy. This is so fast. What sort of power has this thing got? This is insane. We get out at the end after having done a couple of laps and I go to him, "Dude, how much power has this got? What is this? And he goes, "Dude, it's just factory. It's a mostly original car, bits and pieces." And I was stunned. I thought the thing had so much power and was so fast, and clearly driving on track, just the exhilaration and the thrill was enough to make me even think that the car had more power than it really did. And that's it. The bug, I had it. So I went and grabbed my phone and I was on Google searching for cars to buy. Bought myself that blue NA MX-5 that has been in some of my early videos many years ago. Craig S says, if you'd never purchased an MX-5, what would be your track car or project car? And would you ever build a front-wheel drive track car? So I touched on the 86 earlier. In terms of front-wheel drive, undoubtedly a Honda Civic or a Honda Integra. I think either of those options are very appealing, are very strong platforms, lots of power, particularly for an NA car. Yeah, a really nice option. So certainly that's the route I'd go down. Never owned one, never really driven one, so I can't say for sure, but I know that the platform is sound, and yeah, that'd be where I'd go. Next up, we get a question that says, can you explain a bit about the MX-5 oil leak issues and what part to change or maintain to prevent that? I'm not across any MX-5 significant oil leak issues, other than perhaps the main seal, front main seal, rear main seal, and perhaps the cam cover seal, cam shaft seals. That's it. They're it. The way to prevent them is to replace them. The rear main seal is the most annoying because you've got to take the gearbox off. The others are all at the front of the engine and aren't that hard to do. They are DIY jobs. I don't really have any more to tell you. It's almost always just seals that need replacing. They've gone hard, they've aged, and they need replacement. If you've replaced them and they're still leaking, they've probably been installed wrong. It's rare that there's any other issue. RD says, what do you think a first mod or things you should do when you buy one. I think I kind of touched on that earlier. Depends on what you want to do with the car, how you drive it. For a track car, perhaps coilovers, tyres. For a road car, hey, a head unit that's better than the factory one would be great. Oh, good day. But even for a road car, some good tyres make the experience much nicer. And certainly for me, even a road car, I need to change the seats. The factory seats are too high and I don't find them very supportive. Stick says anything worth doing to the car or motor before putting it back in the car. So currently in the process of resealing a new motor. Don't do what I did. Don't forget to give it a coat of paint. Mine I put in and was like, oh duh, someone actually mentioned in a comment in a video, why didn't you paint the thing? So make sure you give it a paint job. I just went and kind of roughly hit it with some silver paint while it's in the car. So don't make that mistake. Otherwise, I'm assuming you're doing all the obvious maintenance stuff. That's it. Don't forget to paint it. Last but not least, final question is from Chris. And Chris is one of the ongoing supporters of the channel, so I really appreciate that, Chris. Only a small channel, there's only a few of you, but yeah, Patreon. So he says, what are you doing for wider tyres and for fenders to cover them? So the answer is fairly simple. In terms of what tyres do I run, Yokohama A050 225s, 225 50/15. The Yokohamas are quite wide for a 225 tyre, so they're more like a 235, 245 even. In terms of what covers them, well, they just fit in under the NB guards with just a light roll or a lip. They run a fairly wide tyre on the NB. On this NA even, 9-inch rims with a 225 tyre is possible if it's a road tyre. And then obviously on the front of the NB track car, if you haven't seen it, I've got the kind of cut front guards or the cut fenders as you call them. And that's a fairly aggressive cut, but it means it's a good way to get more clearance. So the lip has been rolled on those as well. And then the front of those guards is actually spaced out. I've got some spaces under the front mounts where the guard mounts to, where the front bumper also mounts. And so that gives me some front clearance there. And then I've got little aluminium standoffs that just spread the guard out just a little bit to give me a little bit of extra clearance. And that's my way of getting, I don't know, 10, 20 mil, maybe not quite an inch sort of thing of extra space in the front wheel arch, so that under load, under heavy steering, when you're really leaning on the car and the compression of the suspension is quite compressed, I don't get too much rubbing. Now I do get rubbing, usually it's mostly at the rear, not the front, but yeah, that's kind of my only solution. So I run a 15/9 rim, and it runs around a 30 offset, so a little bit wide, but not insanely drastic. I would consider something wider to see if the lap time's improved, but it's kind of hard to get a wider rim and hard to get a wider tyre. So at least over here, you know, I know there are options overseas, but for me in Australia, I'm kind of limited. So yeah, that's my setup. If you'd like to see this sort of thing again, let me know. I did a Q&A like this, I don't know, a few years back, and I thought it was quite fun. And I think this one has been fun too. Thanks very much for watching from both of us. We'll see you next time. Say bye to the camera, dude. Say bye to the camera. Good boy. See ya.
If you didn't catch my last video where I had this car out on track at Sandown Raceway, at the end of the day I had a pretty catastrophic front left brake caliper failure, and well, suffice to say, this wheel is not supposed to be there, and there's no brake caliper there. But what's crazier is that this is the wheel that is supposed to be there, and this is its friend. Yes, so the story goes something like this. I was trundling along on my first hot lap on the 4th session of the day. The car had been going great for all the previous sessions, just about to warm up from a really fast lap. Well, I guess a pretty spicy lap. And I felt something odd under the pedal. The brake pedal felt a bit soft. I heard a bit of a clunk, but I wasn't sure exactly what had caused it.
Immediately thought, no, that's not right, I'll come into the pits. But I was only about a third into the lap. So I had 2/3 of laps still to get back through to pit. And so I'm just trying to ling around slowly, wasn't racing fast, just trying to get the car back and braked for the very last corner when suddenly the whole front left wheel completely locked up. It had locked up because the caliper had come free from its mounting bracket and jammed itself between the rotor and the wheel in such a way that nothing could rotate anymore. This wheel went skidding along. It's all gouged out all through the inside, and the only way I could get the wheel off the car, because it would not come off, was to cut the spokes out to loosen it up from the caliper and from the rotor to get everything off the hub. Let's rewind a bit and I'll show you how that story went down. Don't try this at home, kids. That's a very flat tyre, but at least it's free, but it will not rotate because that rotor's all jammed up with the brake caliper and the wheel. I'm just going to get the grinder and go zzz and break the hub section away from the rim section. That should give me enough movement to be able to get the outside section off, and if I can get this kind of barrel of the rim away, then the caliper will come free and all the rest of it will unbolt. Even undoing these lug nuts, this wheel is not coming off because that brake caliper is just jammed up in there against the rim. So, what an adventure. So, damage report. We can clearly see where the caliper punctured the rim here. Significant sized crack. And obviously all this scuffing which occurred as it spun around. Now the rim's obviously spun around a few times before it eventually jammed up in that hole there. On the other side, this is effectively our flat spot. It doesn't look too bad. I'm going to get some air into this to curve it back or straighten it back out. Maybe I can just patch that up enough to get some pressure into this rim to get this tyre kind of round again. I don't want it to stay like this too long because it's not really good for the tyre. Wow, look at this crazy mess. That is something I'd never expected to see on my car. But yeah, need to get a look at this caliper. Definitely scuffed up, but I think it might be salvageable. I don't see any damage to the brake line. And you can see there, that is a loose bolt. That bolt doesn't look nice. It's all funny looking. Don't know. Problem with these, is that going to come off the rotor? Doesn't seem like it wants to move. The problem with these big brake kits is they use a big dog bone to kind of adapt from the hub to the custom caliper. And those dog bones are often made of aluminium, which is kind of soft. And the risk with that is that, well, it can kind of gall up and bind on the threads of the bolt. So
You don't want them too tight because then that can happen. You don't want them too loose because you can end up with something like this. So potentially it was just a factor of the bolts were loose or they came loose. Look, the brake systems get very hot, and so that sort of heat cycle can potentially work the bolts loose, I guess. I'm not sure, I'm just hypothesizing here. But at least now I can take these two lug nuts off and get the rotor off. The caliper will come with that. And yeah, I'm assuming if I can get the caliper off the rotor, then it looks like it'll be salvageable. We'll need some new pads. I don't think there's too much other damage in there. But wow. Never thought I'd see something like this on my car. Whoa. She's eaten up the inside of the caliper here. A bit munched up. Pads are all cracked. But I think it's okay. The other mounting bolt. Yeah, okay, so they were not... The threads have actually pulled. I don't know how well this will come up. I'm using the GoPro today because it's a bit more easy to work with, but that thread's stripped. So that suggests to me, yeah, wow, I'm lost for words. So this is our Bosenjack dog bone, and the bad news is that section's damaged by the caliper hitting it. I'm just looking at the threads here. Yeah, they're all pulled. Like the bolt can slip in quite some way. It's going in a good, what's that? Nearly 10. That's 10 mil. So I don't know. Potentially it was over tightened and galled up and damaged the threads. Maybe not. I think now these bolts here have got a small amount of the copper grease on them. These are the bolts that hold this to the hub. But the bolts that hold the caliper to this, they're the ones that have failed. Well, the bolts haven't failed, but this caliper has. I have to assume they've come loose, but the threads have been completely torn out. Yeah, wow, crazy. And so damage report now that the car is rolling again, which is a really good thing. It didn't take too long to get it rolling, although it was a pretty significant sacrifice to do so. The rim was done. The rim was done. It had a big old crack in it and scoring all through it. So it was no way you could use that rim again. So I had no qualms about cutting the shit out of the hub. Kind of an interesting experience. It is a bit heart-wrenching to know that that wheel's gone, but that's kind of the biggest loss here. I did lose a set of pads, which sucks, but brake pads are kind of a consumable. Anyway, the hard bit that I'm sort of most worried about are these kind of custom-made dog bone things. I have to try and find a way to get a replacement or a repair. I don't know if I can repair it given the damage is pretty significant. The threads are all chewed out. The two bolts that bolt into those holes, they've got gunk all over them, bits of thread, and yeah, so clearly, look, my presumption is the bolts had come loose or they weren't sufficiently tightened, and they got to the point where they were loose enough that the brake forces tore them out of the thread. Now, whether or not they were ever torqued enough or whether or not they just came loose with use and time and heat cycles, I can't blame myself. I kind of do. I should have checked them. I should be checking them after, say, every track day or whatever, but who knows? I can't tell you when I last tightened them. Can't tell you when I last checked them. Shit happens. All in all, I feel like the damage isn't that bad. I kind of got away fairly well with mostly just my ego damaged. Having to get towed in from the racetrack is never a nice thing. You're costing other people track time. It took them... Look, the towy guys were great. They were great, they were quick, they were efficient, but nonetheless it takes them 5-10 minutes to, because the car wasn't rolling, it was a pain in the ass because you got to drag the thing up onto the trailer, onto the truck. Out of curiosity, I thought I'd check the bolts on this other caliper. This is the one that didn't destroy my day, and these bolts were also, I'd call them, say, finger loose. They seem to be fully tightened all the way, well, mostly all the way in, but there was a tiny bit of wiggle in there, and I was able to get it out without much stress at all. I did use the socket, but it wasn't tight. It was, you know, definitely not buttoned up. So I'm assuming they're working loose with heat and cycles. I'm sure I didn't forget to snug them up, but that's yeah, interesting. Now I should go back and look at the video of when I installed these to see if there were instructions or anything, or torque specs for this. I don't know if there were. I'll have to go back to that video. Downsides with this kit though, zero instructions at all. There's no detail on torque ratings or how to install or anything. Thankfully I made a video, which is kind of good. And one thing to note, that I don't always make these videos just for you guys. I often just make them for myself, for, you know, logging this stuff for the future. So here is one circumstance where having made a video is going to make my life easier. So yeah, interesting. The other side, also knocking on the doors of a potential issue. So plan is to get these rims replaced. I've got a couple of spare wheels of a different set of wheels, so I'm going to swap 2 of the old Avanti Storms for something else, and that'll keep me going. I'll chuck those on the rear, so we'll have the Storms on the front, the other wheels on the rear. The car will look a bit funny, but anyway, that should suffice. I think that tire is okay, which is a huge bonus, because a new tire is expensive. They're like $500 each. It's crazy how much they charge me for these tires. And yeah, the caliper seems okay, bit of scuff marks on it, but it's a tough thing. I think it's going to be fine. This is going to be the hardest part to find and replace or repair, so I'll get onto that immediately. I've got another track day booked in only a fortnight, so I don't really want to have to cancel that. It's going to cost me a lot of money to cancel it. I'd really rather get this car fixed and out there again. Fingers crossed. Thanks so much for your support. Thanks for watching. A crazy one. It wasn't high speed, thankfully. I kind of realized something was wrong early. If it had happened at a big braking zone, that would have been insane. Instead, it was just me kind of trundling to a stop at 50 k's an hour coming into the pit lane. So of all places for it to happen, it happened at the best possible place. That said, I'd rather it didn't happen at all. Time to fix the pretty disastrous mess that the front left brake caliper caused on this car last time I had it out on track. Yep, so the main culprit was actually the mounting bracket for the caliper and the bolts that attach to it. So fundamentally this bolts to the hub, and then the caliper bolts into this. So this is kind of like your dog bone or your adapter. And the threads here are an M10 thread, or at least they were. They got all torn out. Now, my suspicion is the bolts that held them in came loose, and at some point, say they were half loose, they've torn out, and the threads were completely stuffed. Pretty much the entire depth of the hole, the threads were almost gone. So I assume it's because the bolts came loose. It may just been that they've just sort of torn free or were over tightened. I don't know exactly. This is aluminium. When you tighten these down, they never really snug nice and firm. There's always that kind of squishiness that you get with aluminium, particularly with this stuff. I don't know why. I'm going to show you how I fixed this. Now, there's still a bit of a chunk out of this one. It's not really a solution to that problem. There's still plenty of meat there, so I'm hoping there's enough. But these threads have been repaired. They're now M10s with a Healy coil in there. I'll go and show you how I did it.
And with this guy repaired and some fresh bolts, I can now throw this back onto the hub, throw the caliper back onto this guy, and I think that's the worst of the repairs done. I do need 2 new wheels now. Thankfully, I've got a couple of old spares, which I'll use instead. So I will keep the Storms on the front. I'm going to throw the old spares onto the rear wheels now. And hopefully that's it. Car's running and happy again. That caliper does look a little bit worse for wear. I think it's all just superficial damage though. Got lucky with that one because I didn't want to have to try and find a replacement one of those. I'm sure it wouldn't be cheap. All in all, a reasonably successful fix, particularly given the scary circumstances. Thanks for watching. If you're planning to participate in a track day, there are several things you should do beforehand to both yourself and your car to ensure you're prepared and ready for the experience. Here's my must-do things to do before a track day. First up, prepare your car. Make sure your car is in good condition and maintenance is all up to date, so you can be confident that the car is going to be up to the task of being driven on a racetrack. This includes checking brakes, tyres, suspension, and all the fluids are topped up, such as the engine oil, coolant, brake fluid, and consider some extra jugs of fuel as well. Next up is to invest in proper safety gear. Purchase or potentially rent proper safety gear, such as a helmet, racing suit, gloves, and shoes. Make sure they fit well and meet the required safety standards for your location. Safety gear is extremely important because you cannot anticipate what might happen at the track, and taking care of yourself needs to be a priority. Your goal at the end of the day is to go home safely. Number 3 is to check the rules and regulations. Make sure you understand the rules and regs of the track day event that you're attending, including any specific requirements for your car, safety gear, and anything you might need to do prior to the event. This will ensure you don't have any hiccups on the day. For example, here in Australia, regulations for track days usually dictate the requirement of a 1 kilogram fire extinguisher inside the cabin of the vehicle. Another option is to attend a driving school. Something you might want to consider is to prepare your skills and your mindset for the intensity of track driving in a safe environment by attending a driving school or track day orientation. You can familiarize yourself with the track, learn about basic track driving techniques before you get out at speed amongst other more experienced drivers. This can also help with some of that anxiety that can come with first-timers at the track. Pack the basic necessities. Bringing along items such as tools, spare parts, water, food, and sunscreen to ensure you have everything you need while at the track. It just makes your day a little more comfortable and helps keep costs down as opposed to spending money on the day on more expensive fast food or racing around parts stores hunting for a replacement crank sensor on a weekend. It's happened to the best of us. You may also want to consider track insurance. Most road car insurance policies do not cover track events, so it's important to weigh up the option of track insurance to protect yourself and your vehicle. Obviously, this isn't for everyone, but it might make sense for you if, say, this is your first time on the track and you have a more exotic vehicle that could really hurt if you or another driver make a mistake that results in damage to your prized possession. And lastly, remember to relax and have fun. Track days are meant to be a fun and exciting experience. Try to relax and enjoy the experience and avoid chasing faster lap times early in the day when you're still trying to find your feet. Most of all, don't be too hard on yourself if you do make a mistake. The goal should always be to make it home safely and to have fun. If you've got any other suggestions for other track day newbies, please leave a comment below so that others may learn from your experience. Thanks for watching.
When adding a turbocharger to a car to increase engine performance, there are several potential issues that may arise. But if you're clever about it, you can have a fast little Mazda that's still reliable. Let me tell you how. Yes, suffice to say, I've had first-hand experience with the sort of issues that come from turbocharging a car. So let's get started with engine internals. The stock engine in a car like my Mazda MX-5 Miata was not designed to handle the increased levels of boost and power that a turbocharger can provide. The increased pressure and temperature generated by the turbocharger can put stress on the engine internals. In particular, the pistons and conrods, which may lead to premature wear or catastrophic failure if not properly upgraded. Next up is the fuel system. Turbocharging typically requires more fuel to be injected into the engine to compensate for the increased air intake. The stock fuel system in my Mazda here would not be adequate to supply the additional fuel needed for the increased power, which may necessitate upgrading to larger fuel injectors, a higher flow fuel pump, and maybe even a larger fuel rail to ensure proper fuel delivery. Next up is engine management. The stock engine management system is not going to be calibrated to handle the boost and definitely cannot handle the power levels of a turbocharger. Upgrading to a standalone system is absolutely necessary to ensure proper and safe engine performance, fuel delivery, and ignition timing. Heat management. Turbocharging generates additional heat both in the engine bay and the rest of the exhaust system. Proper heat management is crucial to prevent overheating and potential damage to the engine and other components in the engine bay. Upgrading to a larger coolant radiator, adding heat shields, as well as improving exhaust system airflow may be necessary to mitigate the increased heat generated by the turbocharger. Drivetrain and suspension. The increased power and torque from a turbocharger can put additional stress on the drivetrain and suspension components of a vehicle. Upgrading drivetrain components such as a stronger clutch, engine and differential mounts, and possibly an LSD diff center may be necessary to handle the increased power. Additionally, suspension upgrades such as stiffer springs and upgraded shock absorbers may be required to maintain proper handling and balance and grip with the increased performance. Of course, we need to touch on reliability and durability. Turbocharging a car can increase wear and tear on various engine components and may also affect the overall reliability and durability of the vehicle. Proper basic maintenance and monitoring, including regular oil changes, monitoring temperatures and boost levels, and inspecting for any signs of wear or failure are crucial to ensuring long-term reliability of a car that's working far harder than it was ever originally intended in its new turbocharged form. And lastly, we should touch on emissions and legality. Turbocharging a vehicle may affect the emissions compliance and legality of the vehicle, depending on local laws and regulations. Some areas may have strict emissions requirements, and aftermarket modifications such as turbocharging may not be allowed or may require additional inspections to comply with local laws. It's important to research and understand the regulations in your area before proceeding with turbocharging a vehicle, particularly if it's road going. Not so much a problem for me. It's essential to carefully plan and execute a turbocharging upgrade on a car, taking into consideration all the potential issues I've mentioned in this video, and working with knowledgeable and experienced professionals, if needed, to ensure a safe result. Regular maintenance, monitoring, and proper tuning are key to maximizing the performance and longevity of a turbocharged vehicle. Always consult with experienced professionals if you don't have the experience or skill set, and do thorough research before proceeding with any modifications. Safety and reliability should always be a top priority. And remember, modifying your vehicle may void your warranty, so don't say I didn't warn you. If you have any other suggestions or tips about turbocharging your car, please leave a comment down below so that other viewers may learn from your experience. Happy boosting!
Hello and welcome to the in-car footage at Oz Time Attack 2023 in my Mazda MX-5 at Winton Motor Raceway as a rather lovely Lotus, I think it's an Elise or Evora or something, trundles by over the screen there. This is the more or less only dry session I got on the day, and I knew that was going to happen, so I put a lot of kind of focus on the driving in this session, and therefore there's not as much voiceover as you might hear in, or you might be used to in some of my previous videos. So in this one, I'm kind of busy trying to drive as fast as I can, despite it being the first session of the day. Anyways, we head out on track. You'll notice a nice eclectic mix of cars out in front. So a Mosler, that was the out in Pro class, went out first. 311 Evo coming in second, and the third car there ahead of us, the red 911. I'm pretty sure it's a turbo. That thing was pretty swift. That car is in what is supercar class. You might argue a 911 isn't quite a supercar, but it's I guess depends on your perspective. They're definitely a nice car, very impressive and not slow at all. Pretty sure that thing is quicker than my MX-5. Now, first session out for the day, first lap out, I immediately need to, or think in my mind, I need to go as fast as possible, because I know that this is probably my only opportunity to go quick for the day, and I'm a little bit frustrated by sitting behind this 911.
Come on, mate. You don't need to swerve across the whole track right in front of me.
So yeah, unfortunately he decides to use the outlap as an outlap, which is actually pretty reasonable. I think I wanted to get past him as soon as possible and just try and drive, but the two cars ahead were kind of finding their feet. I was a little impatient. Nonetheless, we make our way around this outlap at a steady but not fast pace, and thankfully it doesn't take us too long to start the actual lap. So a couple more corners and the 911 very kindly shifts over to the right, and we go on steaming for our first hot lap. And here we go down Main Straight, Winter Motor Raceway, with a car that's probably got some still rather cool tyres. Pressures were about 22 to 24 psi, and usually these tyres like to get to about 40. So you can see a little bit skittish going over the curves there. Tyres and pressures probably still not quite up to spec. We brake into turn 3, and they've resurfaced and extended the curbing on the exit on the left-hand side here, as well as on the inside on the right-hand side. So you can be pretty aggressive on them, although they are a little bumpy and they do unsettle the car a bit, so you've got to be a little bit careful. Suffice to say, this is my first hot lap of the day in the morning, about 10 AM. It was a very chilly day, so not exactly hot temps, so you've got to be a little bit careful, but I'm not really holding back too much here, trying to put in as much as I can to get some laps in. Car's still moving around a bit. You see there on the exit of the cleavage, I had to do a bit of a correction. More or less, first lap out. A 1:31.9 is not a bad lap, 2 or 3 seconds off my kind of target time, shall we say. So yeah, pretty quick for a first lapper out there. And this lap definitely not holding back. So again, into turn 3, car's pushing, a little bit of a correction on the entry there. Not too bad through turn 4. We come up to the sweeper here. Pushing into that, you can see we're slightly catching that Evo up ahead, so he's not quite up to full pace just yet, and he runs out nice and wide to give us room. Now, suffice to say, that car is quicker than my car. I'm pretty sure he was the one that won the class for the day, so congratulations to them, the 311 Evo. But in this particular lap, I guess, still working up to full pace. third to the last corner, not too bad there. I make something of a mistake here with my gearing, forget to shift to fifth, leave it in fourth where I really should be in third through these final two corners, so it's a little bit messy. And despite that mistake, we still managed to get down into the 29s, which is not too bad. About a second off my PB. And we kick into lap 3. Now, unfortunately, although we're on for a pretty good lap here, we've got some good pace, we're moving well. As we exit, we see after turn 4 on the right hand side there is the gas Evo parked up on the right hand side. Now, suffice to say, you cannot really leave a car out on track while cars are shifting around at pace. So eventually, towards the end of this lap, the yellow flag is thrown. Unfortunately for me, it comes right at the very end of the lap. So at this moment in time, we're still pushing full pace pretty much. Around the second to last corner, and as I come around the final corner, there's a blinking yellow light on the left hand side there, which means we abort the lap slightly early, just before the finish line. We still manage a 29, a high 29, so you do kind of wonder if the gear change wasn't messed up, and we had full throttle all the way down the straight. What sort of time we could have had might not have been too bad, a low 29 maybe. And there was a bit of a mix-up here. In my mind, I thought that the yellow flag initially meant that I just needed to be slow around the obstacle, being the Evo parked on the right-hand side. And so I persisted with pushing somewhat hard through the rest of the lap, thinking that, okay, I cleared the incident and I could continue on. And I guess I would wait for the flags to change. If they were to go red or something to end the session early, then fair enough. If they were going to stay yellow, then I could try and stay out there and assume that perhaps they were going to move that Evo, or they were going to just leave it there as a yellow, as a bit of a warning. What the expectation of the race control was, I should have been slowing for the entire lap. Now, as we come towards the end of this lap, I see ahead of me there are a bunch of other cars going much slower than I am, so I realise, okay, I probably should be slowing a bit more. And they end up coming in the pits, all of them. So my immediate thought is, was this full course yellow an expectation for us to pit? It was a little vague on the expectation from race control, so I kind of play it safe. I'd rather not get in trouble from the people running the event, so I follow the other cars into the pits.
Sure, if it's a yellow, everyone seems to be coming in. I would have thought yellow means stay out, but then there's a car park there and traffic, so I'm not sure what we're doing. So I'm going to come in and play it safe rather than get in trouble. I don't know what the deal is. They threw a yellow, but there's a car out there.
Yeah, they're doing a hot recovery.
Yeah, but I don't want to be out there while they're doing that, so...
The session's still technically open with a great foot lane for your session if you wanted to go back out.
Yeah, I'm going to go out, but as long as I can go out safely.
You can, they just pulled it in.
Alright.
So yeah, effectively the way this team work is they'll send a recovery vehicle out if they can and safely move the vehicle to the infield of the circuit as long as the car can be moved and keep the session more or less rolling. So that's what they did. Costs me though. So I've lost the lap I was on, I've lost the in lap afterwards, and then I've lost this out lap. So effectively 3 laps thrown away because that car was parked up. So here we are again for our out lap now, and I've got to go and do a full lap before I actually start to put in something worth looking at on the scoreboard, so to speak. So trying to get back into the groove as quickly as I can, make sure that everything is healthy and running happily and the tyres are more or less in the range they want to be in. So around we go for a bit of an out lap. So yes, pretty much straight back into the groove, and it's time to go as fast as I possibly can. Suffice to say, coming around the final corner on this out lap, I still managed to do a 1:37, which isn't exactly slow for a lap that went through the pits. At least for an MX-5. And see, here we go for what ends up being my fastest lap of the day. Clouting those curbs like a madman. Normally I would leave it in 4th through turn 3, but no, instead I decided to drop it to 3rd, which is okay, although the car can get a little bit sketchy on the exit here of turn 4. We push it into the sweeper along the left hand corner. Pretty bumpy, curbs aren't exactly friendly, and then immediately after the exit we've got to kind of turn and brake for the first of the 2 boobs. And these are a section of the right, left, right corners. And this last one feels like forever, and it's really hard to get inside apex. But you can kind of ride the curve on the exit, which is nice. And then it's kind of the final back straight. Slight little bit of a relaxing moment all the way up to 5th. Messed up the braking into this corner. I don't know why. I think I brought the confident under with my foot or the pedal. It felt a bit odd, so I kind of turned in too early. It didn't cost me too much, and nonetheless, as we cross the line, we do a 1:29.2, which ends up being my best lap for the day. About 3 or so tenths off my PB at Winton in this car, and good enough for 2nd place in class behind that Evo that we mentioned earlier, and fastest rear-wheel drive in open class, which is nice. So despite a slightly mixed up, difficult session, only really 3 fast laps, or even you could argue 2 fast laps, given one of them involved a yellow flag. And in fact, even this lap, as I was coming around the final corner, they threw the red flag while I was heading down the main straight. Technically, you'd probably argue that as soon as you see the red flag, you should be slowing. I was a little bit cheeky, I'll be honest, and I pushed until I crossed the finish line, so I did an extra couple of 100 metres down the main straight to at least get this lap in, because it was kind of my own lap.
Well, that was first session out, Oz Time Attack 2023 at Sandown Raceway. Not a bad session. Bit of an oily smell in the car. I don't know if that's me or someone else. Could be one of those cars that we saw stricken on the side of the road. Did a 1:29.2 according to my timer, which is within a few tenths of my best, so not too bad at all. I'm quite happy with that. And we got to stay behind this guy, unfortunately, into the pits. So it looks like Evo in front of us had a bit of a bad day. Not ideal for them. No doubt that was expected to be the fastest car of the day, the Global Aircraft Services Evo. It is a former open class winner in World Time Attack and Oz Time Attack. So my direct competitor, and undoubtedly a lot faster, a lot more aero, something like 800 horsepower in that thing. Probably a very spicy car. But we did laps and they had a bit of a bad day. So that's one up for us, I guess. I say us, I mean me. There's no one else here. Well, that's not true. I have got Gareth from Gazbag Motorsport, Gareth Pedley Motorsport, whatever he calls himself these days. He is here helping out, an absolute champ. Go and check him out. He has the YouTubes and the Facebooks and things. Nice bright orange NA MX-5 and a black ND, both of which are pretty swift cars. Very cost effective, fun kind of spec cars, similar to this, perhaps with a little bit less power. And we're going to find garage number 2, which is where we're living today. I can't hear, sorry.
Head up to race control.
Okay.
Head up.
And so yeah, as we're pulling into the pits, clearly race control got onto the radio to have a chat with the guy in the pits and said, hey, send car number 211 up to the race control. I want to have a chat to them about why they went a little bit too fast in the yellow flag. He was really good about it. Clearly a bit of a miscommunication between their expectation and mine. And, you know, clearly always my interest is to do what they want me to do. I want to be driving out there, and to do so I need to kind of do what the officials expect. So suffice to say, I'm apologetic to them. He goes, no worries, just don't do it again. And it's very clear between both of us what we need to be doing. That's about it for this session. This is the cheapest direct drive sim racing wheel that can deliver a mighty 15 torques, and at just $500. Absolutely nothing else on the market can match that dollar to torque ratio. But is there a catch? So who even is Camus? Well, they're a relatively unknown player in the sim racing world, but this quirky company are certainly flexing their muscles with this, the DDWB, a 15 Newton meter direct drive wheelbase that, on first impressions at least, looks very impressive indeed. Well, save for one catastrophic issue that I had, which I'll get to in detail a little later. But well, now Camus are also offering other sim gear, including pedal sets, a variety of accessories, and a recently released motion setup. This wheelbase has been around for over a year now, and from what I've seen in other reviews, it's gone through some iterative updates. My one arrived safely after its long journey from the manufacturer in China, very well packaged in thick foam and double packed in cardboard boxes. If you're wondering who I am and what credentials I have to make me worthy of reviewing sim gear, my name's Brendan. I'm a nobody from Australia who drives an MX-5 track car in real life on occasion, and when my kids are asleep at night, I periodically hoon around in Assetto Corsa. I've been driving all sorts of racing games with all types of hardware since turbo racing on the NES in the 90s. But let's get on to what you're actually here for. Getting this thing out of the box, we're met with the wheelbase itself, which is pretty chonky. A beefy power brick, and of course a USB cable to hook this bad boy up to your PC. Side note, yes, this is PC only, no console support. And lastly, some installation hardware and a basic instruction booklet. First impressions are that this is substantial. A heavy unit over 10 kilograms, dressed in an impressive black anodized aluminium case. However, the obviously aesthetically unpleasant Camus branding on the sides is a downer, but the upside of the sides of the unit is the T-slot rails that may be used for mounting this thing if that floats your boat. At the bum end of the wheelbase is where, well, everything plugs in obviously, and as well as a QR code to bind this wheelbase to your phone. I had some small issues pairing it, took me a good 5 minutes of fumbling before I got it to work. But to be fair to Camus, my phone is a bargain bin hand-me-down from 5 years ago, and it's been dropped more times than I'd like to admit. Round the front of the wheelbase features a familiar style quick release, more on that later. There's also the main power button and a plethora of switches, buttons and knobs. Essentially an integrated button box, which is a unique feature. although they are obviously not in the most accessible location, leaving behind the steering wheel, so not the sort of thing you'd want to be pressing lap after lap. The buttons do have a neat party trick of illuminating when pressed. All this for the $500 entry point is sounding pretty stout, right? But we do need to add a wheel. In my case, complementing the wheelbase is their GT style steering wheel, which is an optional extra. They do also offer a tidy looking F1 wheel if that's up your alley. Either can be had for a couple of $100, or you could grab a buttonless wheel for a little over $60. Note, the wheel did require some assembly. The button box, the wheel, and the quick release all needed to be bolted together. The wheel itself is appropriate for a sim setup, around 320mm in diameter, wrapped in a fake leather with a striking red stitching to rival the quality of that sweater your grandma made when you were in kindergarten. But for what it is, it feels nice and has held up to the numerous hours I've driven with the wheel over the past few weeks. As an attachment to the wheel is the button and paddle setup. On the front you have push buttons, toggle switches, and a pair of rotary encoders, and of course around the back are 2 shifter paddles. The bolt-on button box is a marry of alloy and carbon, so the feel of quality is still high there, but the switchgear itself does not feel very premium, especially the buttons. They are what can be described as quite squishy. Behind the rim you find 2 paddle shifters, again using carbon with a pair of magnets per paddle, which make for a really nice and defined snap as you shift. Last item of note around the back is the Camus quick release system with the integrated pins for the electronics. This is definitely something I view as a positive for this setup. Importantly, this is a common automotive grade system, so there's every chance that this would work with a lot of other quick release mechanisms out there for real cars. Now with that said, I did try my wheel from my actual track car, which uses an NRG brand release. Sadly, that one didn't quite fit. I also tried a couple of cheap Chinese sourced quick releases, and I'm pleased to say that one did fit perfectly. So I'll include a link in the description where you could get one for yourself if that floats your boat. That said, I do find removal of the wheel from the quick release to be a little bit cumbersome, as there's a secondary small push button lock as well as the usual sliding collar. Thankfully, removing a small grub screw does away with the need for the secondary push button and makes the quick change process way more convenient. When it comes to getting this Big Bertha actually set up on the rig, first of all, suffice to say, because of the size and weight of the unit, not to mention the torque it puts out, you're definitely going to need a dedicated cockpit. This is not a wheelbase you can clamp onto your desk. And while I mentioned earlier that this does come with an instruction booklet, I in fact found that actually the manufacturer's online video guides are pretty good for addressing any mysteries about the setup process. Some folk online have claimed mounting is tricky due to the unique hole spacing on the underside, but honestly most of you who are building more serious rigs are fairly handy, and this is no harder than trying to put together some Swedish flat pack furniture. And if you really are a prissy little whiny, well then there are adapters and mounting plate options available from Camus that make this thing even easier to install, including an adapter to convert it to the more common Fanatec bolt pattern. Regardless, for me some standard 80/20 brackets and T-nuts and the wheelbase was firmly attached to my rig without any drama. The rest of the physical install involves simply a USB cable to the back of the PC and the power input via the chonky power brick, and then it's onto the PC software, which was simple enough to download from the Camus website, straightforward to install and run, and in summary it offers the fundamentals for configuration. That is to say, for an average Joe like me, it does exactly what it needs to do. I know I've heard some people criticize its simplicity and lack of customization, but honestly I feel there's enough here to get the wheelbase set up to a reasonable state without overcomplicating life. Now I need to say that this is all pretty seamless. Upon powering up the wheelbase and connecting the wheel, the software immediately detected everything and presented all the options we needed. Also, from here we can do firmware updates, save custom configs to load later, so as far as I'm concerned it does what it needs to do in a straightforward way. Sadly, here is where I first noticed my significant problem. The button display on the screen highlights which buttons or switches you press, and for me the left paddle was permanently depressed and wouldn't register clicks. I tried all the obvious things like restarting everything, checking connections, before eventually resorting to contacting Camus directly. After some back and forth via email, they had me disassemble the unit, where I found no visible signs of a fault. I tried resyncing the wheel to their base via the mobile app. None of this helped. They eventually sent me out a replacement sensor for the shifter, which arrived rather timely within a week or two via DHL. And although I had to do some disassembly and reassembly, it thankfully did resolve the issue there. Now onto the meat and potatoes, the driving. I started in Assetto Corsa because that's where I spend most of my time driving virtually, and immediately there's no doubt this 15 Newton meters on offer is powerful. At first I was saying to myself, wow, this is really smooth, but then I realized it was too smooth. It was like driving a Rolls Royce. The feedback and the detail were just a little bit too washed out. It was like that time I put my wife's red dress in the laundry and it came out pink. Get it? Washed out? Now, making some tweaks in the camera software and the in-game settings certainly helped a lot. I reduced the overall force output, removed some of the damper settings, and increased the effects to 100% in the camera side of things, and then made some finer adjustments for AC itself. I had a go at a few different driving styles, an old school F1 car around Monaco, some drifting, and even a rally course. In all cases, the experience was overall pretty positive. And after I'd made those initial adjustments to the settings, it was a much better experience than what I was first met with out of the box. The F1 car was slidey and struggled under braking, but you could feel when the fronts locked up. The drift cars could hold steady slides and transitioned, but I do think in hindsight for those cars I should have increased the lock-to-lock ratio a bit. And then when it came to the rally car, well, other than realizing I was terrible at it, particularly without a co-driver, this was probably where I felt a lack of detail hurt me the most. I couldn't quite get a good feel for the grip on the dirt. I wanted to see if this was similar with other games, so I moved on to Dirt 3. This at first needed a tweak to the dead zone in the game settings to get the steering ratio right, and then it drove okay, but still I was driving a rally car on gravel, but it felt more like I was driving a Mercedes S-Class on a German autobahn. Now suffice to say, I mostly just did Ken Block style Gymkhana-esque thrashing around in one of the open maps. The game was still great fun, driving a car over different surfaces and in between obstacles. You could get it sliding and the feedback was strong and accurate. And then lastly, I tried Assetto Corsa Competizione. First of all, immediately, the feedback was precise, and down the straights, the general feel of the wheel was, well, I'd describe it as powerful. It was my favourite experience to jump in and go of all the driving I'd done thus far with the wheel. Still, there was that same slight lack of detail once I was comfortable with the car and got into a groove. So when I started to push the car through a lap, I'd be hitting curbs or leaning on the tyres through a long corner, and in the back of my mind, I was finding I had a lack of fidelity in my feel for the car. I have to say, it did remind me of why I really enjoy ACC and just generally driving GT cars. They're such a thrilling driving experience. The Camus DDWB is a strong wheelbase at an extremely competitive price point. It delivers on raw horsepower, kind of the old school muscle car approach, all brawn and no brains. It has some excellent features that maybe even some of the bigger manufacturers should be jealous about, including the buttons on the base and the standard bolt pattern for the steering wheel mount. The software is functional but not overcomplicated, if a little brief for the more advanced sim driver. My initial impressions of the questionable button quality was somewhat validated with the faulty paddle, but honestly, as part of the process of having to open up the inside of the button box, it was, to my untrained eye, really nicely made inside. I've seen reviews online criticize the availability to source this unit or the delivery costs when getting it from China, but in reality those problems have largely gone away now with a growing list of dealers worldwide. The lack of refinement in terms of feedback means that it's so close but not quite there. It's drivable, but I was never as confident as I think I wanted to be. There's so much potential, I am sure, with some firmware updates, some tweaks to settings. This wheel would be hard to rival at this price point. I don't see this wheelbase as an industry revolution, but it sure will keep the bigger guys on their toes and stop them from getting too complacent. Martin Brundle mentioned in a recent F1 race about how drivers use their feel for the car, not their eyes, to control the vehicle when on the edge, particularly in wet conditions. I felt like that slight lack of detail with this Camus DDWB left me forced to use my eyes more than I otherwise would because the feel isn't quite there. In other words, this wheelbase helps you become a Latifi level driver, but not a Verstappen. The Camus DDWB, impressive specs, a beefy wheelbase, commendable feature set, just a slightly mixed bag of quality and feel. But the price is competitive. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you'd like to see more, you know what to do. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Ready? Let's drive. Wait, go back this way. Do you want to drive on the road, or you want to just do burnouts?
This is my turn-by-turn guide to driving a quick lap time around Sandown Raceway. I'll show you through my lap of the circuit in detail, describing how and where to place your car to achieve that perfect lap time. And we start by heading down the main straight, past the pit lane and the start-finish line, and then the iconic grandstand. You'll eventually bring the car toward the right side of the circuit in readiness for the first braking zone into Turn 1. Turn 1. The approach into Turn 1 is high speed and the braking zone is bumpy, but it's a fairly straightforward 90-degree corner with an out-in-out approach. This is a heavy braking moment, and if you get it wrong, you'll end up heading straight on into the dirt. So you need to find the right braking point for your car, somewhere around the 100 board marker. There is that balance here of initially straight line braking and then carrying the brake pedal toward the apex. The corner is quite fast, so you do carry speed through the apex, and the exit is slightly downhill, but with a sizable curb on the exit that you can make use of. As we exit the corner, we are on the far right of the track, and need to immediately aim the car back toward the left. Here is the first corner at speed. Turn 2-3. The next corner complex comes after a short downhill run. You get just enough time to get the car positioned on the left before the braking zone. There's a quick transition here. You won't be touching the throttle much between 2 and 3, so the focus is around being smooth, carrying speed all the way through for a clean exit. Braking hard from the short straight, you carry that brake towards the apex of Turn 2. The line through 2-3 can be somewhat conservative. Here you'll want to use as much of the curb on each apex as your car can handle. They are somewhat aggressive curbs, and some cars, short of a Rolls-Royce, may not have the stability to cope with a full V8 supercar style attack here, as it could unsettle the balance of the car too much. The exit from 3 should leave the car just riding atop the outside rumble strip. Your right-handed door handle just an arm's reach away from the guardrail, with you quickly approaching Turn 4. Here are the second and third corners at full speed. The fourth turn at Sandown is theoretically the easiest on the track, but it's exceptionally important. It's slow and straightforward, but the exit is critical because of the long straight that immediately follows. So your top speed down the back straight relies on how you approach Turn 4. The key factors are to use all the track, starting wide, still kissing that outside curb as you turn in, rotate through the midpoint of Turn 4, aiming to be touching the inside apex, and then carrying the momentum but without washing wide on exit or understeering, causing you to compromise that all-important exit speed. You end up on the exit curbing, which you can really ride the car on top of. This puts you onto the back straight and you start ripping through the gears. Let's see Turn 4 at full speed. Shortly before the track climbs uphill, there is a slight right-hand kink known as Turn 5. While most every car would treat this as just a full throttle straight, there is still consideration to be made on how you take this part of the track. To ensure the least scrub of the tyre, and thus to minimise any speed loss, we want to move the car slightly left before the kink, brush past the inside curb, as we apex 5, and then let the car move back to the left as much as it needs to without inducing any tyre scrub. It's about minimizing lateral Gs using the full track width, but not excessively swerving side to side across the circuit. Outside of turn 5 is the long run up the back straight. Now, here's turn 5. Six is the highest speed corner on the circuit, making it also one that rewards the brave and where time can be gained. The entry here is obviously high speed. There's a slight crest and then a drop right around the braking mark for turn 6, so depending on the speed of your car, you may be able to get the car settled after that bump before you need to brake. If not, you'll need to be cautious with how you apply the brakes into this corner. You'll be carrying the brake pedal slightly as you turn in to help pull the car in and around the corner. As you bring the car into the apex, you want to aim to ride the left-hand wheels over the sawtooth curbing. Then, as you come through to the exit phase of turn 6, you'll line the car up to aim to drive directly over the curb hump of the next kink. Let's watch turn 6 at full tilt. Turn 6 quickly feeds into the kink that I always assumed was one corner, but is actually considered two. Turns 7 and 8. This corner is usually taken flat, with the car riding mostly straight over the curb hump. You'll likely need to put in an amount of steering angle on the car to bring it round to the right as you ride over the curb and in preparation for the following braking zone. Some smaller, lower or lighter cars or open wheelers would probably not follow this same line and instead have to divert around, but mostly any road car will be able to handle this straight on line approach just fine. Now let me show you corners 7 and 8 at speed. At the bottom of the hill after the previous high-speed section is the comparatively slow and tight turn 9. It's a high-speed entry with a risky braking zone, where you need to get the car across from the left mid-side of the track to the right and then on the brakes immediately after riding over the curb out of turn 7-8. Keep in mind, the braking zone on entry can be tough and unsettling for the car. The inside apex has a substantial paved section which is exceptionally inviting to ride over. Doing so increases the turn radius, allowing you to carry more corner speed. You can turn in early and effectively aim to almost have your bum riding over the inside curb at the apex. Really abuse the curb here for best results. The exit is relatively straightforward. If you carry the right amount of speed into and through the corner, you should end up riding up onto the exit curb, which will help fire the car out of the corner. Here's turn 9. Ten is another corner that's not really a corner, just a kink in a straight. Similar to turn 5, keep in mind to take it as efficiently as possible. Don't swing too far left on the exit from 9, mostly just ride along the right side of the track as the circuit kinks right. Your right hand wheels will just kiss the grass on that side of the track as you gently turn right as you line up your car diagonally to aim toward the entry into the next corner. Let's watch turn 10 at full tilt. The final braking zone, entry into turns 11 and 12, is again critical for the same reason as turn 4, to maximize the pace down the following straight. So entry here is about a hard and somewhat late brake, but carrying that deceleration into and around turn 11. To pull the car right, staying on the curbs on the right hand side of the exit of 11, which will then maximize the momentum you carry into the apex of turn 12 and thus onto the main straight. You may need a light brake application just before turning into 12, then you want to be on the power early, ride the car out wide to the right, using as much track exit as you need in the guise of more speed down the straight. Now let's see this pair of corners at speed. And finally, not to be forgotten, the last of the corners that's not really a corner is turn 13. The exit from 12 has you facing toward pit entry, with the car far right of the tarmac. But the circuit kinks to the left, so to minimise the distance travelled down the straight, you want to begin to aim your car toward turn 1 in as straight of a line as possible. Yes, you want to plan that far ahead. So as you cross past the entry into pit lane, you'll be riding close to the left-hand guardrail, straight lining what is turn 13. This heads you off down the main straight, across the start-finish line to start your next lap. Let's watch the final corner. Now, here's the entire lap. Firstly, I'll show you the full lap uninterrupted and without commentary. Then I'll run the lap a second time and talk through the lines as we go. And so let's go for a lap. As we enter the main straight, we have pit entry directly in front of us, but we sweep left past turn 13, cross the start finish line to start our lap. On our right hand side is the pit exit, and then the main grandstand. We head down the main straight with the car moving to the right hand side of the circuit to brake into turn 1. This is a long, deep braking moment. We clip the inside apex, the car runs out wide over the exit curbing, and then we quickly move the car back to the left to brake into turn 2. Turn 2, then turn 3 are a quick right-left complex. We ride up onto the curb on the exit of turn 3 and use that as entry into turn 4, run out wide and just ride the curb on the exit of 4. We move slightly left and then gradually turn right through turn 5 as we head up the back straight. We shift through the gears while we enjoy a slight breather, and gradually the car needs to move back towards the right in preparation for turn 6. Just as we crest the hill, we brake hard into turn 6, ride the left-hand curbing through turn 6, straight line over the 7-8 curbing, and bring the car back to the right as quickly as we can to brake into turn 9. On the inside apex of 9, we ride that curb as much as we can, and then there's the short jump towards turn 11. Between that, the slight right-hand kink for turn 10. Quickly, we brake a straight line for turn 11, keeping the car right. We use the right-hand curb here to shoot us over to turn 12. Clip that apex, right out wide, again turn 13, and that is my lap of Sandown Raceway. Sandown is certainly a power circuit, but it's not as simple as just point and squirt. A skilled driver will still outpace an amateur in a more powerful car, be it from speed and bravery carried over the top of 6, or from knowing the right way to get that corner exit speed onto the main straights. For me, the value of having a track so conveniently located as Sandown is in a suburban Melbourne is something to be appreciated while we still have it. I've been Brendan of BEAVIS Motorsport with my take on the ideal lap around Sandown Raceway here in Australia. I drive a Mazda MX-5 with relatively modest power, some DIY aero work and a little bit of homemade ingenuity. Now if you're interested, I've also got guides on how to tackle the two other major tracks here in Melbourne, both the Phillip Island Grand Prix circuit and the Winton Motor Raceway, which you may also want to check out. I'll have links for them in the description. Thanks very much for watching. We'll see you later.
I tested some Max Peating Rods coilovers 6 years ago and honestly they were terrible. But fast forward to the end of 2023 and I've got a new set. So we're going to find out how they compare and how they've improved and how they stack up against something worth 5 times the price. This video really does feel a little bit like deja vu, but I'm actually keen to see how these compare to the set I tested back in 2017. I tested a non-adjustable coilover from Max Peating Rods, the yellow version. These are now their latest blue and black iteration. Quite a nice look to them, but how will they actually perform? We will find out. So how's this going to go down? Step 1, get these things out of the box, have a quick peruse over what they look like in terms of build quality. Number 2 is get them in the car. Done that many times before, particularly in the MX-5, so that's going to be a breeze. And then number 3 is, of course, get this thing out on the road and do a bit of a road test and find out what they're like in terms of performance compared to something worth quite a lot more. For comparison's sake, this is a set of MCA brand coilovers. You're looking at around about 2,000 Aussie dollars, whereas these are about 400 Aussie dollars for the Max Peating Rods. You're not going to really find much under the $2,000 mark that's of a name brand, particularly for an MX-5. These things are built and spec'd and valved to the MX-5. These, I don't know. Now my experience with the previous iteration was pretty bad. They were very crashy and hard, the valving was very poor, they didn't dampen well despite having relatively soft springs. They weren't adjustable in terms of damping, they were only adjustable in spring and shock length, which meant that I actually couldn't get them low enough to sit even appropriate on the car, even just at a static ride height. They looked way too high, particularly in the rear. The shock was clearly just kind of a standard shock and they hadn't set it specific to the MX-5, so it was a pretty bad experience. In the end, I took them out immediately after. There was no way I was going to leave them in the car. They were literally crap. I got roasted in the comments, as you'd expect on YouTube, people telling me I set them up wrong or I adjusted them wrong. That's a matter of opinion. I'm quite well versed in MX-5s and in suspension. I've had, I don't know, 10 different types of damper and shock in my MX-5s. I am also a relatively competent driver, not a professional, but I do have a fairly fast MX-5 that has lap records. So it's not a slow car and I'm not exactly a shit driver. So suffice to say, I kind of have a bit of experience. Now in terms of the makeup of these shocks, relatively straightforward, pretty much the same as any other shock for an MX-5. We have an adjustable base with a collar, we have a spring with its adjustable perch, and a knob up the top for damper adjustment. That's kind of the basic minimum you expect from a shock, aftermarket shock these days. Now, depending on who you talk to, some people on the internet will say you should adjust this piece to adjust your ride height. Some people say you should adjust the spring pre-tension to adjust your ride height. I'm going to leave you people in the comments to make your own opinions on that. The instructions from Max Peating Rods say to adjust the bottom section and not to touch the spring to adjust ride height. Keep that in mind when we get to the install part of this video. Overall, I don't see a drastic change in quality over the old yellow ones. It's not bad, it actually looks pretty good on face value, at least from an exterior perspective. I like the new color scheme, it's definitely an improvement from the yellow. We've got machined aluminium top hats, a nice little adjustment knob up the top here, 24-point adjustment. Fairly standard rubber bushing in the bottom, that's nothing I wouldn't expect. And that's about it. Pretty straightforward. I will say spring rates do seem to be a little bit light. 6 kilos appears in the rear, 7 in the front, so not exactly a heavy rate spring. Probably appropriate for a general road use car. As soon as you start to hit the track, that's probably a little bit light and definitely stiffer than stock.
Furthermore, the adjustment rings appear to be quite nice in this tidy machined grey. The front shocks have these mounting tabs welded on for the MX-5 ABS sensor wire bracket, which is a welcome addition. The shock shaft have dust boots, which is a neat way to keep dirt and debris away from the important bits and aid with reliability and longevity. I do note one of the studs here is canted off slightly outboard. It's not perfectly vertical.
Now, in terms of installation process, I will caveat this by saying technically the right way to do this is to install the damper without the spring attached to ensure that we get full motion of travel and the wheel doesn't bind up with the inner wheel arch. So you do that by setting effectively your minimum depth or your bump stop on your shock, so that when the shock is fully compressed and it's on the bump stop, the wheel is not rubbing on the guard. I'm not going to do that. The instructions say don't touch the spring, so I'm going to do what I'm told. In my opinion, that can lead to an incorrectly installed shock.
The shock that just come out, the shock that's about to go in, and there is a massive difference in overall length. Bit hard to see on camera, but it's at least an inch and a half or so. Now, there is adjustability in this shot length here, so obviously I can make a bit of a change there, but the overall height clearly has not been kind of set from factory, shall we say. Now, let's see what we can do with adjustment here. Because I know the problem with the previous version was that you could only wind the bottom in so far before it was already bottomed out on the shock. So clearly that problem hasn't changed. That's just been wound in all the way, and we're still a good inch longer, which means we're potentially a good in the range of about an inch higher. Now, this car wasn't dumped before, but it certainly wasn't high, shall we say. You wouldn't want to go much lower than what I already have on this car for most normal street cars. And already we're looking at an inch higher potentially, depending on the spring rate and things, because obviously how much rate we have may impact how low the car sits. But let's throw this in. Interesting already. I'm becoming a little bit more skeptical, which I shouldn't be. But let's find out what happens when we actually get this back on the car. Right off the bat, that's like four-wheel drive height. It's not looking good. I'm trying not to be biased here, and I'm trying not to be a skeptic, but all signs point to nothing has improved. Or very little, at least. I wound the shock bottom in as far as I could, and we've got this much gap. I'm sorry, but an adjustable shock, particularly for a performance car, shouldn't be at ride height at its lowest setting. Let's just find out how the thing handles, and maybe it's like amazing and we're, you know. Got the first of two shocks out from the front now. Similar story to the rear. The one that was on the car is quite a bit shorter, a good 1 or 2 inches than the peating rod. Again, let's see how much of adjustability we've got in the bottom before it fully bottoms out. Well, in this case, we've wound right up to the spring base, and again, we're still a good nearly an inch longer.
I did encounter a significant issue here when it came to setting the base height for the second of the front shocks. In the location where this tab had been welded onto the lower mount, it had burnt through the tube, resulting in this blob of metal inside. This prevented the shock from being wound in fully, which was a significant issue for setting these up properly. Now, I did correct it myself by taking to it with a die grinder. There was just enough room to get it down in there to remove the lump of metal. But that's an issue that's not necessarily something that the average Joe would pick up, nor would it be necessarily easy for them to fix.
So it's time for the fun bit where we get to go in the car and drive it and find out what this suspension is like. Got my expert alongside me to hopefully keep me on my toes and tell me if I'm doing the wrong thing here, but on face value, so far, suspension feeling okay. I've got it all set on the softest setting pretty much, so shocks are set to about 5 or 6 clicks from softest out of the 24 clicks that it has in total adjustment. So right off the bat, I'd say the soft setting is probably a bit too soft for this type of driving, but that said, it definitely feels okay, if that makes sense. Now, I do find that on the more gradual bumps, these shocks seem to hold up okay. The shock and spring sort of match well, but for the crashy stuff, the real sudden bumps like a pothole or something, it feels a very aggressive bump.
So maybe the high-speed valving is different, or it's a, you know, it's not a kind of variable valve or something inside that shock, and so when it's a sudden bump like that, it doesn't feel great. So we've had a quick run in the car. It's time to swing it around and head back. I've adjusted the shocks up to a more stiffer setting, so let's see how the dampers handle that higher, stiffer setting in an exciting bit of driving. Wow, definitely that's woken up the car. It's much firmer now, much more pointed. Now, of course, before we had a compliant soft ride, which was probably nice for every day. Bit of a higher speed section here, but we've still got some curves through the road, and there's a few bumps like here. Oh, not bad, handled it okay, not too crashy. Up to some traffic, but look, on the firm setting, it's not uncomfortable. It's quite drivable. It's quite pleasant. If anything, I'd say it's probably how I prefer the car to be for me. But that said, if I was driving this absolutely every day, I'd probably dial it back down to one of those lower settings. We've got a bit more compliance, a bit more comfort. When you hit a bump or something, it doesn't kind of ride up your back quite as aggressive. Definitely roads like this are something of what the Mazda MX-5 was made for. This car feels at home driving around here, and it just feels nimble, it feels light, fingertip steering. It's such a place for this MX-5 to be. They just love it. And with this suspension, it's way better than like the stock stuff. I can't drive an MX-5 that's got stock suspension. I'm markedly impressed with how this stuff has improved. Now maybe mostly that's a case of the damper and the adjustability, I'm sure, but there's still some build quality issues there with that max Peter rod stuff. The poor adjustability in height alone, poor adjustability in the shock length alone is a reason to not buy them. Not to mention the slightly iffy build quality. The actual ride quality, the damping adjustment, all of that stuff, way better than it used to be. Actually drivable. But I'm not driving around in a four-wheel drive every day. I'm not driving around in an off-roader MX-5. The wheel gap on the back here looks stupid. No normal person is going to do it. It's, if anything, higher than stock, and it's on the lowest setting. Not good enough. If they're doing some actual R&D and actually testing a product in a real car, they put it on one car and see how bad it is. I can't comprehend how they're building this product, thousands of them, and not knowing that this is an issue. It's been an issue for over 6 years, and it's still an issue today. I don't know what to tell you. But the last video on this stuff, I got roasted in the comments by people who didn't really know what they were doing and didn't necessarily have experience, or perhaps they were using the max Peting rods in a different car. But in the Mazda MX-5, they're not good enough.
I have to say, having driven the car now, this is a marked improvement over the old version. Damping quality is way better. That may be attributed just to being able to adjust the damper at the top here. I'm not sure, but definitely way more comfortable, way more compliant, and then much less crashy than the older iteration. But there's still a significant problem. Firstly, just the shock adjustability is very poor. The base height is not set correctly for an MX-5. If the minimum I wind these shocks in is still higher than stock, these are not appropriately adjustable for the car. Effectively, I need to get a shorter shock to make this work, or a shorter spring, which is not what they tell you to do in the instructions. I should be able to set this correctly from factory. It can't do that. The other thing is the quality is still a little bit questionable. Most notably, the welds on the inside of the front shock, which rendered the bottom mount not able to fully seat onto the shock. Not good. Otherwise, the actual ride quality is great. Adjustability is great. The cost, it's pretty hard to beat.
So as we near the end of 2023, I have to say it's been a good year. This car coming second in Oz Time Attack in Open Class was probably one of its highlights. There's lots of news happening in this channel. First off, most importantly, I've now got a join button on this channel. If you're interested or willing to consider supporting this channel financially, I really appreciate you considering doing so. Now, suffice to say, this channel makes me somewhere in the vicinity of about $2,000 a year, which barely covers the cost of a set of tires. So if you're like me and you use an ad blocker, but you want to support your favorite YouTube people, then the best way to do so is to join or support the channel officially. That way you can enjoy your ad blocker. I don't get impeded by not getting the ad revenue, but you can still support me and help me buy those tires, because as it runs, this car is very expensive to run, particularly with how fast it is these days. So every bit of help is really appreciated. So please consider clicking the join button. It'll help me out because I gotta feed my kids. Some of the exciting new things on this car, well, starting off, some new blue accents just to give it a bit more zip and zang. Some blue striping on the side skirts. I blacked out this inner section of the side skirt. It used to be white. Gives it a bit of a different flavor to the car. Kind of sharpens it up, I think, anyway. And the key thing is in the interior though. Well, kind of. There's two things. One, the shifter is back in because I got the gearbox back in because I got a whole new gearbox built. Well, new as in rebuilt the existing one with kind of all new bits. Yes, you might remember back in the Bend earlier this year, the gearbox failed finally, which is kind of inevitable to be fair, but I've had both this gearbox and my spare one out and shipped off to Neat in South Australia. They do gearbox rebuilds and upgrades, and they put two of them together, the broken one and the good one, and they built one stronger one out of it. They also did some upgrades that hopefully mean that this thing will last longer than it ever needed to in the past. So fingers crossed that's worked. It was very expensive. Don't ask me how much. Also in here is a passenger seat because the plan is to take some people for rides, particularly those most important to me, like my mum, because I want to scare her. I'm sure that'll work. Video on that coming soon. And under the bonnet, things have been pretty reliable this year, which has been very welcoming. A few little changes. I've got a new engine damper, something I'm trying out to see if that works. I had to jerry-rig my own bracketry to make it fit because there's too many non-standard things here. I've got a new gasket for the turbo because the other one was gone. I've got a second Kraken manifold, so I bought a second brand new one with the intent of keeping the other one as a spare. It had a broken stud, so I removed it and repaired it, but I put all brand new studs in this one. Nice new big chunky Inconels. And otherwise, the rest of it's all been pretty reliable for the last few events, so I haven't had to touch it, which is very nice. In terms of other stuff happening on this car, well, I did some more tweaks to the dashboard, but I'm not going to share them on this channel anymore. I've got a new channel for all my nerdy, techie, gizmo type stuff, so check out Tech Beaver. Go and look it up. Please subscribe. All of the things that used to be on this channel that were kind of left of field and more nerdy will be over there, as well as some other projects that are more around the tech world and kind of gizmos, whether it's Arduinos, Raspberry Pis, that sort of thing. They're not really suited to this channel. This is going to be kind of more about the car stuff, which it always has been, and the nerdy bits will be over there. If you like nerdy stuff, please subscribe. And back in the shed, and I've got a set of coilovers that I'm giving away. Yes, I don't need these anymore. These are the Max Peating rods that I did a recent video review on. You may have seen that and the original video review I did like 7 years ago or something. These are the new edition or updated version. A much better product, still not perfect, but I'm going to give them away to one of you. I don't need them anymore, and I'd rather donate them than kind of just try and have them sitting here or sell them or something. I'm just going to give them away. So if you want these, link in the description, win them for yourself. The other wild thing that's been going on is I bought a Porsche 944 from 1985 that doesn't even run. Well, that's not true. It runs now because I fixed it. But it didn't run when I bought it, which was, to be fair, over a year ago now. And at least now it does move under its own steam. Still needs a fair bit of work. But you can see all the videos on that coming very soon. Probably have those out in the next few weeks. It's been a long-running, slow project, just as I have some spare time in my back pocket, but it was a cheap car. I got it with sort of a checkered, unknown history. If you know anything about these, you'll know that they're kind of like a big fat MX-5. 4-cylinder engine up front, rear-wheel drive, kind of a two-door coupe thing. It's got 4 seats, although the back seats are kind of just dicky seats. But yeah, the engine, she needed a bit of work. Well, electronically mostly. It does run now. It's not perfect. A lot of bits need to be buttoned up, but dedicated video on that coming very soon. And yes, as someone who does this only in their spare time, if you would consider clicking the join button and supporting this channel formally, I'd be ever so grateful. I need all the help I can get to keep this channel alive and going, and to find time and money to be able to fund all the crazy things that I want to do here. But what do I have in return for you? Well, the important thing is you get a whole lot of content way earlier than most other people. Secondly, I want to share that I've got a Discord server now, kind of new to how the Discord stuff works, so please excuse me if I'm completely ignorant, but please join it and we can chat. I can share my thoughts, you can ask questions, I can give you opinions. Keep in mind, I'm not an expert, not a mechanic, but I do know MX-5's a little bit. So if you want to know what's going on, if you want to know things about me, you want to know what to do with your car, please join the Discord and let's chat. With so many cool things planned and so much coming up, I don't know why you wouldn't want to subscribe, so please click the button below and I'll see you next time. Do you want to tell people something? What do you want to tell them? You want to speak English?
I need to turn the car.
If you've made it this far, thanks for enduring that 3 hours. Thanks for an amazing year. Of course, I wish I could have done more, but suffice to say, I was kept pretty busy with my 2 little monkeys. See you next year.